Slice, with a dull thud, a severed head fell to the ground. A man with jet-black hair exhaled heavily, his eyes fixed on the tattoo of the character blood etched onto the corpse's forehead. It was the mark worn only by the highest-ranking blood disciples of the Central Blood Sect, Zhang Yuan's most formidable martial order. The man slowly turned his back on the body. Without a word, he began to ascend the snow-covered mountain, cloaked in a thick, suffocating fog. His steps staggered. His arms trembled violently. Anyone watching would have seen clearly this was a man at the edge of collapse. And still he climbed. Even if death awaited him at the summit he had to go, he didn't stop walking. Half a jiong, a quarter hour, half an hour. A full hour. 2. By the time 5 had passed, he halted. Before him stood the ruins of the everlasting snow palace, collapsed over a decade ago. He said nothing, did nothing, just stood there, watching. Silently, solemnly, he stared. Another hour passed. Then at last he clenched the sword in his hand with force. A biting wind swept past his cheek. He could feel it. The pursuers from the Central Blood Sect closing in fast. Their killing intent weighed heavily upon the mountain. The overwhelming pressure of warriors who had reached the second realm of the fivefold path of the martial god, manifestation of the infinite. Among them, one presence in particular seemed powerful enough to shake the very heavens. "So this is it," he muttered to himself. Just then, 5 figures descended from the sky. One of them, an imposing, bald man, shouted at the top of his lungs. "You ungrateful bastard, lower than a stray dog." "Are you speaking to me?" The black-haired man replied calmly. "Who the hell else would I be talking to?" The man chuckled. "Well, you've got 4 others standing right next to you, elder." "You little." But the man's smile didn't waver. Still grinning, he continued. "Since the day I joined the Central Blood Sect, I've never once committed an act that harmed it. That, I believe, is a fact. You speak as though your mouth isn't the very reason for our sect's ruin. Because of you?" "Because of me," he interrupted, voice still calm. "Someone declares they want to leave, and your response is to poison them and launch a surprise attack? All I did was defend myself. And elder, no matter how depraved the blood sect may be, even among monsters, those at the top should at least know how to honor their word. You dare lecture me? Why not? There's a saying, among 3 walking together, one is bound to be my teacher. I'm offering you a sincere piece of advice, and all you do is blow your top. Sial Unwai, bearer of heaven's judgment. That title's long since discarded. You'll regret this." "I won't." "So leave." The bald elder gave a bitter chuckle. "Unfortunately, I can't just walk away." "Is that so?" "I've been given a direct order to take your head, so that's what I'll do." "A direct order from the sect lord himself?" Unexpectedly, the elder gave a sly smile and pointed skyward with his index finger. "No, from even higher." At that, Sial Unwai gave a knowing smirk. "So those lazy bastards up top finally got their egos bruised? You know damn well why." "Do I? Let's see." "Smashing the blood stone you were planning to sacrifice. Setting fire to the peach garden, decapitating the demon sect's Lord of Thunder. Honestly, I can't think of anything else. Any one of those alone is reason enough for a death beyond imagining. And you know it. Of course I knew, but what could I do? It just irritated the hell out of me." "You're insane." "Am I? Then what about the dozen others above me who have clearly lost their minds?" Then, with a quieter voice. "And let's not pretend, elder. You know it too. You speak to me as though you understand them, but in truth, you don't know a thing about those people, do you? There are truths in this world one should know, and truths one must never learn. You've always been afraid. I've known it from the beginning. You're a dangerous man. I'm aware. No, you're not. You have no idea. You're the only one in this entire martial world who could truly threaten the sect lord's reign. Why are you complimenting me all of a sudden? Doesn't suit you." The truth was, Sial Unwai had reached a level where he could challenge even the supreme masters of the martial world. The title Heaven's Judgment hadn't even existed in the blood sect before. One who corrects the heavens of the sect itself. That was the meaning. It was a position created by the sect lord himself 2 decades ago, and solely for Sial Unwai. Its authority rivaled that of the Grand Elder. Even the deputy sect lord tread carefully around it. It carried autonomous power, authority to monitor the sect's internal affairs, to train and educate talent, to oversee discipline. In essence, a position second to none, yet above all, which was exactly why they could not let someone like him walk away. He knew far too much. This ending was inevitable. Grand Elder Yong Unsiang slowly shook his head. "So be it. The order has already been given. Even if you regret it now, I've regretted a great deal, truly," Sial Unwai interrupted. "You dare interrupt me? We're strangers now. Am I not allowed to?" And for the record, none of my regrets have anything to do with the blood sect. They're all from my past, elsewhere. That's why you came here. There's nowhere else for me to go. You lunatic. A bastard born in the everlasting snow palace, returning here in your final hour pretending to repent. Don't make me laugh. Was it not your own hand that brought this place to ruin? I'm not NOVYELIGHT, exclusive on NOVYELIGHT, here to repent. And I had my reasons. After the former lord of the everlasting snow palace died, some lunatic took the throne and began pulling every sort of ridiculous stunt. What was I supposed to do, leave it standing? Sial Unwai ran a hand through his hair. As you said, Elder, we've known each other a long time, so one last time I'll make a final offer. Is that your last will? No, but you should hear it. Yong Unsiang gave a slight nod, motioning him to go on. Sial Unwai spoke plainly. Turn back. The 30 years we spent together, let that be payment enough. I see. I understand. So you'll leave? Of course not. Sial Unwai's words had meant, live your life on the run, but that was something Yong Unsiang could never accept. Running, how could a man like him spend the rest of his life fleeing? He'd last at best 2 weeks. He would be caught and killed before the month was over. Yong Unsiang began drawing upon the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, while Sial Unwai raised his sword. Sial Unwai had brought the sect countless victories. He had trained promising successors, true talents who could one day lead the blood sect forward. His blossoming abilities had arrived late, but they were nothing short of divinely blessed. But when the sect kept trying to devour him from within, what choice did he have? This outcome had been inevitable from the start. Even before arriving at this place, Sial Unwai had already reached his limit. Now blood poured from his lips. He didn't even bother to wipe it away. Life, they said, is an arrow once loosed, and now that arrow had reached its mark. The last remnants of his innate energy flared to life. The strength he had cultivated over a lifetime surged and gathered into a single point. Farewell, Elder. No sooner had the words left his lips than Yong Unsiang roared, Kill him! The blood sect warriors charged forward. The masters of the fivefold martial realms reached into the sky, drawing down its divine force. The heavens themselves seemed to fall. They clashed. Though his body teetered on the edge of death, Sial Unwai's spirit, refined over 5 decades, stood unshaken. The arrogance with which he had once quelled the martial world, the force with which he shattered the gates of heaven, the moment he split open the skull of the immortal Maitreya, the awe that made elders of the martial alliance kneel. All of it, his very being, was not something to be cowed by the likes of this. Even if Yong Unsiang now stood on the verge of achieving the final state of the martial god's path, sovereign of primordial oneness, even if Sial Unwai's body were so fragile it might die from a mere breeze, resolve was beyond the reach of such things. His arms surged with power. The heaven-defying blade shatters the firmament, all laws crumble before it. One sword pierces through eternity, gods and devils vanish alike. Heaven-defying sword of desolation. The one sword that embraces the void. A lifetime of swordsmanship surged through a single swing. The sword light cleaved the heavens. The everlasting snow mountain groaned. Crimson energy laced the glacial wind, splitting through centuries of ancient ice. Slice, a hairline crack opened across Yong Unsiang's neck. The 4 blood sect warriors who had charged in alongside him, each now bore a fracture clean across the waist. Their overwhelming power. Their presence that had pressed down the entire mountain, even the everlasting snow mountain itself, everything had been cut in half. KRRAAK. A deafening explosion, a blizzard tore through the sky. Sial Unwai staggered. He drove his sword into the ground, leaning on it like a cane. No one remained to hear him. No one at all. Even when he shattered the blood stone, even when he burned the peach garden to the ground, even when the martial world branded him a demonic fiend beyond redemption, he had never once regretted those things. That was the truth. But just once, only once, there was one regret that clung to him like a chain. At first, he hadn't known what it was, hadn't known what kept dragging him back, what it was he couldn't shake off. Too late, he realized. I should have stayed, that time. The sundered mountain began to collapse. An avalanche thundered down from the heavens. That colossal wall of ice, which had stood for millennia, maybe tens of thousands of years, came crashing down with a roar. Sial Unwai didn't dodge. He had no intention of running. The right to choose your final moment is a rare one. He chose this place. He accepted it. His death. And because it was that kind of moment, he finally let the words inside him pour out. Because only in such a moment could he say them, if only, if I had just one more chance. The avalanche was upon him. He saw his father, the man who had once terrified him, the supreme lord of the everlasting snow palace. The sky above the palace itself. Sial Unwai remembered the spikes he had driven into that man's chest, how deeply he regretted them. "I won't run this time, father. I'll face it. Do what I was meant to do." The avalanche swallowed him whole, his body shattered, limbs torn apart. And then from within the collapsing storm of snow, a brilliant light flashed. Sial Unwai didn't see it. He didn't see the gemstone embed itself into his heart, and just like that, his consciousness vanished. Death, or perhaps a beginning. It was strange. There was a momentary sensation, as though he were being pulled somewhere. Then a crushing weight overtook his entire body. Death, so this is death. He'd brushed against it more times than he could count, stared it in the face even, but this was different. This must be true death. His mind blurred, dissolving into fragments. Everything he had built began to scatter. Even his enlightenment, his essence, fragmented like petals in the wind. I learned that humans are animals meant to walk forward. But what about the moment of death? Could it be walking backwards, like now? I didn't resist and naturally accepted it. But why? Why are my eyes opening? My mouth gaped in shock. An unbelievable scene unfolded before me. A familiar wind chime at the end of the eaves swayed in the breeze. And beyond that, the everlasting snow mountains stood unharmed. I had split them in half with all my might, so why are they still intact? I immediately got up and was greatly alarmed. It was I who had gotten up. I looked at my arms. I had undergone 3 major transformations in my life, yet scars had always formed. But now not a single scar was visible. It was too clean. No, this wasn't just clean. They were the hands of someone around 16 or 17 years old. I turned my head. The door burst open and a man entered. His face was all too familiar. He. "Master, you need to sign some documents today." His grinning face. My eyebrows furrowed. Before I fled from the everlasting snow palace, I was the branch chief of the snow compression branch. And the man who had been in charge of a subsection since I first took office was this very scoundrel in front of me. His name was Yawun Sang. He bowed and handed me a stack of documents, his face smeared with a malicious smile. I had seen it before in my past life. I had just been too busy avoiding it. I looked around. The structure of the walls, the tables and desks, the bedchamber, putting it all together, it was clear this moment was from when I was 17. Whether this was a dream or not, at this moment there was something I had to do. I reached out and took the documents Yawun Sang was offering. "Just stamp your seal here." I quietly skimmed the document. A plan for pioneering a new supply route through the northern ice cliffs. Yes, that's correct. There's been a lot of demand for a new route. It would shorten the time. Shorten the time, huh? A bitter smile spread across my lips as I flipped through the pages. "You've signed a contract with the Chengguun Trade Company." "Yes, Branch Chief. Chengguun is the most trustworthy company in snow compression. But do you know that this new route goes through an avalanche-prone area?" The fact that he stopped talking was unusual for Yawun Sang, and his expression hardened. It must have been the first time for him at this point. Yawun Sang forced a smile and opened his mouth. "Ah, you don't need to worry too much." "I am worried. The old route is safe but takes longer, the new one is faster but dangerous. And there are other strange points here." "What? What might those be?" "Firstly, the transportation cost estimation for safety measures is too low. Even if warriors fly through the skies and shatter mountains, there are no such powerful individuals here in snow compression, especially since most of the company consists of civilians and weak warriors." Let's skip that for now since there's a bigger issue." Ignoring Yawun Sang's gulp, I continued. "Second, the contract lists me as the responsible party, but the recipient of NOVELIGHT, the insurance money, is you. Well, since you're the transportation manager. If I'm the manager, shouldn't I be the recipient?" "Master, haven't I always managed the company's operations? If an avalanche occurs, the insurance money received will quickly." It was an excuse. I cut him off again. There was no reason to listen to such things. "Third, the price of this Hanryung jade essence is listed as 20 silver pieces." Yawun Sang's face turned pale. "As far as I know, the market price of Hanryung jade essence is about 10 silver pieces. But if it's inflated like this, the insurance money received in case of an accident will double." That is..." It was simple. Signing insurance contracts with trade companies is common, but why would a trade company? Chengguun is not foolish, and they would know that 10 silver pieces are sufficient for Hanryung jade essence, so why sign for 20? It was obvious. "Have you heard that story?" "What?" Story, the one about a servant who dares to rise above his master, should be torn apart. Yes. Was the Chengguan Trade Company's second daughter that appealing to you? That is, you seem to have grown quite ahead while acting as the power behind snow compression. Has it grown so much that now you also desire women? Whether this situation was too surreal, Yawun Sang seemed unable to gather his thoughts. Why would you say that? His dumbfounded expression wasn't too unpleasant to look at. I continued solemnly. I'm not sure if you knew this, but about 10 days after I sign these documents, an avalanche will occur. Excuse me, what are you talking about? Due to heavy snowfall the previous day, the ground will weaken there, and you, among about 4 others, will survive, and because of that incident, you will take over everything from Chengguan Trade Company. You'll take both the younger and older daughters. From what I remember, you were the one who executed the head of Chengguan Trade Company? Yes, that was it. Yawun Sang started looking at me strangely. However, I could feel the faint fear in his eyes. You take the money and I take the blame. It's still fresh in my memory. I slammed the documents shut. Yawun Sang, did I not see this before? Yes. Or did I see it but chose not to want to see? Branch Chief, even if there is an accident, the responsibility I can take is minimal. Why? I may be a bastard, but I'm still of the blood of the everlasting Snow Palace. Thinking it's natural to run away, being a pile of inferiority complex, makes you a perfect candidate for assuming power. A fool like you above makes it right for someone like you to act this way. After all, in this world, the one who gets stepped on becomes a fool. It's a world where stepping on others is how you prove yourself. That's absolutely not the case. You say it's absolutely not the case, but isn't this similar to what has happened more than once? I slowly stood up. This is the martial world. In the martial world, if you don't have power, you're eaten. That couldn't be denied. That's the world where martial artists live. But let me say this. If you've risked everything to gain something, you should be prepared to lose everything if you fail to obtain it. Are you fully prepared for that? It's settled. Talking more makes my mouth hurt. I swung the bundle of documents. Whoosh, Yawun Sang's head jerked back. I utilized the snow mountain heart method still lingering in my memory. Though weak, a definite surge of internal energy rose from my blood vessels. It soon moved towards the bundle of documents, and not long after, a very faint level of sword energy emerged at its end. After adjusting my grip, I brought it down sharply. Thwack! Yawun Sang blocked it with his hand. Master, what are you doing? I swung my foot. Wham! Yawun Sang, struck in the jaw, fell backward and rolled before quickly getting up. Anger and murderous intent filled his face. As I walked towards him, Yawun Sang cried out, Stop! Please stop! Ignoring him, I kicked, striking his abdomen. Thud, he staggered back. I couldn't help but chuckle at his technique to soften the impact with his internal energy. Master, can't you hear when someone says stop? Yawun Sang's tone changed, but it didn't matter. No matter how much anger he unleashed or murderous intent he spread, his lingering hesitation was still there. Hesitation dulls the sword and determination sharpens it. I'm already intent on killing you, yet you hesitate. Whether you're a ghost or a real entity doesn't matter. I let the bundle of documents hang down. At least come at me like a man, not a scared dog in your final moment. Fine. Even if you are the master, attacking a subsection chief like me without cause is wrong. So I will restrain you first. Saying this, Yawun Sang drew his sword and stamped his foot. His sword embroidered the air. Above, beside, below, it was excessively flashy. Illusory swords are dazzling and real swords are tranquil. I took a light step forward. Yawun Sang's sword missed the mark and I moved in close to him. Shock filled his face. How did you? Silently, I thrust the document bundle filled with my internal energy. Poomph. It struck his abdomen, but I wasn't satisfied. Casually, I tossed it aside and drew the dagger from my waist. As Yawun Sang, clutching his abdomen, staggered backward, I looked at him. Please spare me. A smile formed on my lips at his pitiful voice. Such a small man he was. In the past, such a trivial man had exploited me. I had been mocked as a puppet and used, all because I lacked power. Thinking that avoiding the situation was the best option was the biggest mistake and regret of my naive youth. Everything started here. It was time to shake it off. As I walked slowly, I continued. If there's a next life, live within your means, don't climb higher than your station. I struck down decisively. Poomph, it pierced his heart. I withdrew it and then thrust it into Yawun Sang's neck. Poomph. Ga-ack. Quietly, I watched his dying eyes. Soon they lost their strength. At that moment, I felt certain. All of this was not a dream but reality. Just as I was standing up, the door burst open and 3 men rushed in. "What's going?" "Oh," wiping the blood on my face, I spoke briefly. "Clean this up." "Excuse me?" That wasn't the response I wanted. I turned my head. "The discipline of the snow compression branch is a mess." Don't make me say it twice. "Clean this up and gather all the branch members." Immediately, truly, it was a refreshing morning. Even if I felt certain, I couldn't help but doubt. Traveling back in time was just too surreal. But dreams, no matter how vague or realistic they might feel, can't be as realistic as this. This is clear reality. I have traveled back in time, by as much as 40 years. I touched my face. The Danshan, which had always been distinct, was now separated, and the power I once wielded, drawing on the spirit of the heavens and the earth, had disappeared like dust. Yet I was alive, and I could start again. But first, I needed to understand the phenomenon. Why had this happened? Defying time meant defying the natural order and the flow of the universe, something utterly incomprehensible. The fate of defying heaven isn't something anyone can bear, and not everyone is capable of defying heaven. Not even those heavyweights above the skies could manage it. I stroked my face as I looked in the mirror. The last moment. I had been caught in an avalanche. The protective aura around my body had been meaningless then, since I had already expended it all. I distinctly felt my limbs being torn apart, my neck ripped open, and my head crushed. No. Wait. I focused more intently. There was something more. The realm I had reached was the sovereign of primordial oneness. At such a level, one could hardly be called human. Even with a shattered head, one could survive. No matter how depleted and tired, to truly kill a warrior of the sovereign of primordial oneness, certain conditions must be met. First, the head must be destroyed, followed by the heart. Second, the heart must be destroyed, followed by the head. Or else, both the heart and head must be destroyed simultaneously. Only the complete loss of both heart and brain functions results in death. Let's think again. I had definitely felt my limbs being ripped apart and my head being crushed. So at that moment, what happened to my heart? Had it burst? Yes, it had, but before it burst, something had pierced it. I touched my chin thoughtfully. What could have pierced it? It was the avalanche that occurred in the great everlasting snow mountains, which I had split in half. It couldn't have contained just snow and dirt. There must have been byproducts. What if one of those byproducts was a heavenly treasure capable of defying heaven? If so, that would explain the current phenomenon. I looked up at the window. The enormous everlasting snow mountains, clearly visible, filled my view. Those mountains that had stood there for thousands of years must hold many secrets yet to be uncovered. A smile formed on my lips. All those things I had burst out with before dying were sincere. The life of a bastard. As a child, I felt that life was like being a pig tied up in shackles, and I had to escape from there to live a truly human life. The only thought occupying my mind was that this place was not where I belonged, and everything I did was a mess. To be honest, after leaving the Snow Palace, my life did change. I entered a mysterious realm, learned martial arts there, made a name for myself with those martial arts, and eventually joined the Central Blood Sect, known as the most malicious sect in the Central Plains. 40 years. That was how long I had lived as a warrior in the Blood Sect. And only 19 years, that was how long I had lived in the Snow Palace. The 40 years I lived wildly without regrets, but those 19 years were filled with deep regrets. They always held me back, haunting even my dreams. Since I was no longer able to return to the Snow Palace, I had wished from afar that it would last forever. However, as time passed, the Snow Palace began to resemble a filthier group than even the Central Blood Sect, and I had to make a decision. I personally destroyed it. Though I have no regrets about that, now a new opportunity has arisen. I plan to live without regrets. Branch Chief? I turned my head. A middle-aged man with unkempt hair stood there. There is only one general manager who handles various matters in this snow compression branch. His name is Sung Yang-ho. Usually he's called Manager Sung. All the branch members have assembled. I nodded and moved forward. Then pausing beside him, I placed a hand on his shoulder. Manager Sung? Yes, sir. Ah, master. Is the job manageable? Yes, of course. Something about this situation made me laugh unwittingly. I know the job of a manager is tough. It's okay. It's strange to be okay with a job you never expected to have. For a moment, Sung Yang-ho's eyes flashed, but that was fleeting. Had I not returned, I wouldn't have noticed such a brief moment. Manager Sung? Yes, master. There will be a storm of blood today. Make sure the subordinates don't falter. No reply came. Why do you look at me like that? Are you okay? Do I look ill? It's not that, but you seem much changed, I laughed. In a world where one must change to survive, of course, I must change. If you need anything, come find me. And let's standardize the form of address, whether it's young master or branch chief. I'd like to call you young master. Then let it be so. With that, I stepped outside. There were 18 people in total. These were the members gathered at the training grounds of the snow compression branch, regardless of age or gender, all harboring the same question. Sial Unwai had changed. Once a subordinate figure, always crouching, he had killed a man today. Not just any man, but Yawun Sang, a deputy chief of the snow compression branch. Who was Yawun Sang? He was a distinguished disciple from the jurisdiction sword sect, officially dispatched to the snow compression branch. Among the disciples of Bingxial Jiamhun, Ice Snow Sword Scar, Li Jai Chang, one of the 4 elders of the jurisdiction sword sect, Yawun Sang was a promising individual. But now he lay there just a head remaining. A madman. This had to be madness from a bastard. It was an act no sane person could conceive. Suddenly, another question occurred. Yawun Sang was at the beginning stages of the Yangqinghyun realm, but how could Sial Unwai, who was barely at the Juchen level, have killed him? And why had he gathered us here like this? Putting other questions aside, the last one was soon answered. Is everyone here? Everyone turned towards the still youthful voice. At 17 years of age, his face looked youthful as his voice, but strangely he carried a weight about him. Sial Unwai quietly surveyed the members of the snow compression branch with inscrutable eyes. You must be curious why I've gathered you here. Yawun Sang, who lies dead over there, dared to overstep his role as a deputy chief and tried to usurp the authority of the chief. He stole money and power, and he deserved to die for his crimes. Sial Unwai paused for a moment, then smiled lightly as he put his hands behind his back. I am the chief of the snow compression branch, and each one of you is an integral part of this branch. From this moment on, one absolute rule is established in the snow compression branch: absolute obedience to the chief's words. Anyone who violates this will be executed immediately. I will rip their heads off and grind their limbs to feed to the dogs. If anyone dislikes this arrangement, raise your hand now or turn around and leave the branch. Why had Sial Unwai gathered them here? It was for 2 main reasons. The first was as just stated. From this moment on, the snow compression branch would change. The role of branch chief is not a lowly one. Especially here in the north, where the everlasting snow palace is located, the branch chief holds a very high position. Everyone knows that there is no nation in the north. The everlasting snow palace might not be a nation, but it operates in the form of one. Most of the lands around these snowy mountains are under the rule of the everlasting snow palace, and the position of branch chief is akin to that of a military governor or magistrate in these parts. Surprisingly, there was no one who opposed Sial Unwai's speech. Everyone stood their ground, only looking at him with stern eyes. Meeting their gaze, Sial Unwai brought up the second reason he had summoned them. Second from the left, the N-O-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456 GHT. Don't copy, read here. One with long hair stepped forward. A man with a displeased look took 2 steps forward. And at the far right, the bald one come forward too. As Sial Unwai instructed, the man with the shiny bald head walked forward. Sial Unwai looked at them and asked, You seem to have grievances, speak up. Master, I understand what you're thinking, but this isn't right. This isn't right? Yes. Yawun Sang was a distinguished disciple of the jurisdiction sword sect. His master is Bingxial Jiamhun, a warrior among warriors who has reached Samwachujiang. Sial Unwai looked at the man curiously. A warrior among warriors. That's not a common phrase. What's your name? The man, as if implying that Sial Unwai should know the names of his subordinates, introduced himself. I'm Kang Sang, and the bald one, what about you? Wu Sanghyun. Good, we've introduced ourselves. Continue, Kang Sang. The wrath of Bingxial Jiamhun will come down upon the snow compression branch. And his wrath will not only fall on you, master, but all of us branch members will likely die as well. Kang Sang's story continued, detailing the influence of the jurisdiction sword sect in the neighboring city of Yangryong, how much the elders of the sect had cherished Yawun Sang, that Sial Unwai had been in the snow palace before Yawun Sang was even a deputy chief here, and how Yawun Sang had wielded significant influence. Sial Unwai listened very quietly to the entire account. After it seemed Kang Sang had said all he needed to, he finally shut his mouth. Are you done? Yes, I'm done. What question? While belonging to the everlasting Snow Palace, why do you speak on behalf of the jurisdiction's sword sect? Kang Sang flinched. If this Bingxial or whatever comes here, this place will become his grave. Excuse me, if he brings people with him, they will die too. Xiao Anwai moved closer until he was right in front of Kang Sang's face. What do you think this place is? This is snow compression. I am the master here. Xiao Anwai looked at Kang Sang with steady eyes. Being the master means I hold the life and death of everyone here in my hands. Talking about it brings back memories that had become vague. What memories are becoming clear? It was a memory from the past, and it was confusing. But it was clear that Yawun Sang had devoured Chengguun Trading Company. In Xiao Anwai's past memories, that event had definitely occurred. And from that point on, Yawun Sang began to exert tremendous influence in snow compression, while Xiao Anwai increasingly became a puppet. The everlasting Snow Palace had never intervened. In the past, Xiao Anwai had resignedly thought that the Snow Palace didn't care because he was a bastard, but upon reflection, that wasn't the case. The palace's ruler had been giving him opportunities all along. They said I could make amends. They said I could turn it all back, that I could overturn everything. That's just how the world works. Helping someone isn't hard. Giving money isn't hard either. The everlasting Snow Palace is powerful and wealthy after all. But teaching someone how to gain power or how to earn money, that's a different story. That's something a person must decide for themselves. No one can help you with the very first step. I didn't know that, and because I didn't, I regretted it. In any case, there were people who supported Yawun Sang, those two over there. I had a feeling there were more, but for now I let it slide. I was confident I could weed them all out eventually. After a moment of silent thought, Xiao Anwai continued in a calm voice. Chengguun Trading Company. It may not be a major company across the entirety of Zhangyuan, or even compared to the everlasting Snow Palace, but here in this backwater like the snow compression branch, it's a very large one. There's no way Yawun Sang swallowed it whole on his own. And seeing the look on your face, full of dissatisfaction with me for killing him, and how desperately you're defending him, it all fits. A cold smile formed on Xiao Anwai's lips. Were you pocketing the dirty money with Yawun Sang? That's, so you were. Honestly, there was no need to keep talking. That's enough. It happened in a flash. Xiao Anwai drew the dagger strapped to his waist, thwack, and drove it straight into Kang Sang's side. Flash phantom piercing art. This was Xiao Anwai's own modified martial art, adapted from the Ghost Soul One Dagger technique, the signature assassination art of the Gate of Phantom Souls. The original technique was designed to suppress killing intent entirely and approach the target like a shadow to strike a vital point. An assassination technique. But it required far more preparation than people assumed. First, to suppress killing intent, one had to waste unnecessary internal energy. Second, there was no guarantee a single strike would kill. Third, mastering the technique for concealing intent required significant time. Fourth, the complexity of the form made the entry barrier incredibly high. Anwai had modified it to an extreme degree. First, he gave up concealing killing intent and instead focused purely on the suddenness of the ambush. Second, he condensed and exploded his internal energy in an instant, allowing him to move at nearly the limit of human speed in the blink of an eye. Third, he minimized the preparatory movements to an absolute minimum. Anwai had set dagger release points. From the back of his waist, 3 CHE, approximately 9 cm to the left, 4 CHE, around 12 cm to the right. There was no way a regular martial artist could defend against such a technique. He watched Kang Sang, who groaned in agony, just a little farther forward and it would pierce the heart. Anwai asked, "Does it hurt?" "Ta Lord, Branch Master." Kang Sang wanted to live. He clutched Anwai's arm desperately, his eyes pleading. "Please pull it out, please don't kill me." A gentle smile tugged at Anwai's lips. "You want to live?" Cough. "Why, yes. Yes, and yet, while lining your pockets with dirty money, you dared covet the branch master's authority, and you think I should spare you? Everything. Cough. It's all in the warehouse. Please. The warehouse, huh? How generous of you, telling me exactly where you hid the money. Turns out you're dumber than I thought." Whether it was actually in the warehouse or not didn't matter. He'd search every spot that came to mind anyway. Anwai shoved the dagger deeper. Thwack. Cough. The blade pierced Kang Sang's heart. His body began to collapse. Xiao Anwai grabbed the man's hair, pulled the dagger from his chest, and then stabbed it into his throat. Thwack. Blood spurted. He twisted it to the side, and with a sickening crack, Kang Sang's spine snapped. Unwai pulled out the dagger and turned around. Standing before him, trembling, was the bald-headed man, Wu Sanghyun. Unwai, still holding the blood-soaked dagger, began walking toward him. With every step Sial Unwai took forward, Wu Sanghyun took one step back. El Lord Branch Master. I really had no such intentions. Yawun Sang made me do it, it was all him. So, just because he told you to, you ignored your branch master's authority, tried to climb over him, and planned to swallow an entire company for yourself. You have quite the sense of humor. More importantly, I know Sword Scar will come. I know everything about Yawun Sang's crimes. I've even spoken with him in private. I can persuade him, I swear. Unwai burst into laughter. Oh, were you worried about me all this time? I'm touched. I don't know what to do with all this gratitude. Sanghyun kept retreating until his back hit a scarecrow in the corner of the training yard, and Sial Unwai stood before him. It was the perfect angle to drive a dagger through the neck. Do you have anything else to say? Yes, I do. Save it for the afterlife. What? Thwuk. Sial Unwai's dagger pierced straight through Wu Sanghyun's throat. Silence fell over the training yard. I didn't care what they thought of me. I had no intention of living while watching their faces, and no reason to in the first place. There's a reason why positions of authority exist. This is how it's supposed to be. Especially in a small, backwater place like the Snow Compression Branch, only one person needs to play the role of leader. More than one just creates problems. I merely restored it to how it should be, so what more is needed? As I stared at them in silence, I pointed to one man. You, 2 steps forward. The man, whose body was a head taller than most, swallowed hard and stepped forward as instructed. What's your name? It's Chinpeng. I'll give you an order. Choose about 5 branch members and raid the residences of that dead bastard Yawun Sang, and those other 2. Unfortunately, Yawun Sang's name was the only one that stuck in my mind. I couldn't remember the names of the other 2, but it made sense. Guys that insignificant weren't worth remembering. Stuffing my head with useless things like that would just take up space better used for something else. Chinpeng clasped his fists in salute and soon selected about 5 branch members. The 5 of them looked a bit bewildered. Seemed Chinpeng's status wasn't all that much higher than theirs. That was fine. Even if I'm currently only at the realm of revolving heavens, I know talent when I see it. And he had the potential to reach the 5 foundation pillars one day. Before long, the 5 branch members began running off, and Chinpeng came to report back. I instructed them to retrieve everything from their residences. Also, I forgot to mention, there's a ledger. A ledger? Yes, a record written by Yawun Sang himself. It should be there in his quarters. In his quarters. But tell me, those 5 who ran off, can they be trusted? Probably, I let out a sigh. When you're doing something, the first thing you need to determine is the priority. What's the most important thing right now regarding Yawun Sang? The ledger. That ledger will contain everything he's done. Naturally, it'll also list the names of his accomplices. I'll ask again. I picked you for a reason. Because I saw potential in you. That's your chance and you know it. So in this situation, what should you do? Chinpeng swallowed again. I'll go myself and retrieve it. I'd prefer if you could bring it back without damage. Of course. I will without fail, without damage. And don't make me say something like this again, understood? Yes, sir. Then go. Chinpeng bolted off. He was almost drawing on innate energy with that speed. At this rate, he'd not only catch up to the others, he'd probably pass them. I looked around and spoke. The rest of you follow me? Our destination was Chengguan Trading Company. Chengguan Trading Company, the company head, Cheng Myong, swallowed hard. There was no way he didn't know what had just happened at the Snow Compression Branch. Sial Unwai, the bastard son of the everlasting Snow Palace, was rampaging. He killed Yawun Sang, the deputy chief, and the 2 loyal subordinates who followed him, Wu Sanghyun and Kang Sang. He had only heard rumors up to this point, but now, right before Cheng Myong's eyes, were the 3 severed heads neatly laid out. Between the heads, Sial Unwai pushed forward a bundle of documents. Read it! Cheng Myong swallowed again and picked up the papers. Though soaked in blood and still dripping red, they were legible. He skimmed through them quickly. All the while, he kept sneaking glances at Sial Unwai. Don't be scared. At those unexpected words from Sial Unwai, Cheng Myong felt his chest loosen. Strangely, a sudden calm washed over him. He was an odd man, you could say. A man who knew how to give his words weight. Once Cheng Myong had carefully read every line in the document, just as he was about to drop to his knees on the spot. Don't kneel either. He slowly lifted his head. Sial Unwai stared back at him with an emotionless face. It made him question whether this was really the same Novelight man he'd known until now. Had the real Sial Unwai died and someone else taken his place? If not, then how could a man change so drastically? We don't need a long conversation, just one question. Why did you do it? That is. Was Yawun Sang really that terrifying? It wasn't an easy question to answer, it couldn't be. To be honest, Sial Unwai had a point. Yawun Sang was terrifying. But why had he been so afraid of Yawun Sang? When you followed that thread back, the root cause was simple. Sial Unwai, the branch master, had been nothing but a scarecrow. In a situation like that, how could anyone not be afraid of Yawun Sang? He had powerful connections, especially to the nearby city of Yangryong. He was a true power player. Chung Myung swallowed again. His mind raced. If he said he feared Yawun Sang, it would naturally imply that Sial Unwai had been weak and incompetent. As a merchant, there was only one logical choice left for him to make. Silence. He wanted to change the subject, to move away from it as fast as possible. To just apologize, say he would accept punishment, promise never to let it happen again. Just anything to avoid ending up like those 3 severed heads. He was ready to beg, grovel with hands and feet, when Sial Unwai's next words made his eyes go wide. It's not uncommon for a madman to go wild, thinking he has real power in a place where the idiot at the top not only lacks ability but avoids responsibility altogether. That's. And it's true, isn't it? That I've been acting like some half-witted moron with half a brain this whole time. Chung Myung's mouth dropped open. What? What in the world was happening? If he answered, yes, that's right, I was that stupid and pathetic, then one of the swords behind him would almost certainly take Chung Myung's head. Especially that small-framed man. There was a savage glint in his eyes. He wasn't ordinary. That one was probably a branch member named Han Murin. Master Chung. A voice snapped him back to reality. Yes, how could I not know what's in your heart? I understand it all. That insurance contract in your hands, you only drew that up because of coercion. And while those 3 bastards took responsibility for it, strictly speaking, I can't say I'm completely without blame either. But these events happened because I was too soft before. It's only right that I take responsibility for that. Of course, that doesn't mean I'll be handing over my own head, so I intend to take responsibility in my own way. Would you care to hear it? It was disorienting. He expected to be rebuked, yet instead, Sial Unwai was practically apologizing. Seriously, was he insane? Chung Myung swallowed hard and replied, I'm listening. Good attitude, it's simple. From now on, I intend to entrust over 70% of the snow compression branch's transportation to your company. It was a short statement. But Chung Myung wasn't the master of a trading company for nothing. He was sharp with numbers, which was exactly why he was a company master. He knew instantly how huge that offer was. Lord Branch Master, we may be a large trading company in the snow compression area, but even so, I don't think we're capable of handling over 70% of the logistics here. Why do you think you can't? Chung Myung blinked. You're quick with calculations, but it seems your ambitions are a little small. You're not saying. To take responsibility for snow compression, you'll need to grow to the proper size, hire people, absorb the surrounding companies. He was dazed. As he stared, Sial Unwai continued. Those without power usually have 3 choices. The first is to crash into things and die gloriously in the attempt. The second is to lower their heads again and again, no matter how filthy the work. The third is to side with someone stronger. Sial Unwai's face was serious, and Chung Myung's expression mirrored his. At the very least, whether you believe it or not, I'm currently the strongest in snow compression. Later, if someone stronger appears, you can choose to follow them or not. That's your decision. But for now, you should stick with me. And I'll give you a fitting opportunity for doing so. Why? Why would you grant us such a great opportunity? I don't know whether someone like you should be running a company of your current size or if you're capable of managing something even bigger. Honestly, I have no idea, but this is how I choose to take responsibility. Sial Unwai stared silently at Chung Myung, then asked calmly, Earlier I said the powerless had 3 choices. Do you remember? Yes, I remember. Then what kinds of choices do those with power have? That is, they can use someone for a long time, use them and discard them once they're no longer useful, give them better opportunities and test their worth. There are countless choices. I'll choose in my own way, you choose in yours. With that, he stood up. Do you need time to prepare? Yes, please give me 2 days. 2 days, fine. And from now on, all transport operations are yours. Thank you very much. And before you begin, bring a proper insurance contract to the branch office. I'll allow a reasonable profit margin. But if you do anything remotely like Yawun Sang did, all my offers will be rescinded on the spot. And Chengguan Trading Company will be kicked out of snow compression entirely. And I expect you'll leave behind a decent amount of blood. Why, you have nothing to worry about? Xiao Unwai gave a slight nod and turned away. He'd handled the tasks in front of him lightly. Now it was time to raise his martial cultivation. As he stepped outside, he saw Chen Peng smiling brightly with sweat on his forehead. You found it? Yes, I found it. Xiao Unwai took the ledger he handed over and began flipping through it quickly. His eyes darted without pause, scanning every part with the clear intent not to miss a single detail. Then he stopped at one section. A short laugh escaped him. They really pulled all kinds of crap. A few of the branch members flinched at those words, but Xiao Unwai pretended not to notice and resumed reading. He stopped and snorted again, 3 times in total. Then, silently lost in thought, he closed the ledger with a snap and turned to Chen Peng. How much did we get from their quarters? We recovered 10 gold ingots and about 500 silver pieces. It was a massive discrepancy from the amount listed in the ledger. 6 years, over the span of 6 years, only 10 gold ingots and 500 silvers. That didn't make sense. But it was understandable. They must have been skimming funds on a regular basis and sending the money elsewhere. No wonder the place was empty. What about items? We found spirit pills, advanced cultivation resources, and some armaments. Everything's been brought back to the branch. You can verify them when ready. Xiao Unwai thought for a moment about the entries in the ledger and casually asked, among the pills, were there any Ice Heart Purity pills, White Tiger Essence elixirs, Body Reinforcement pills, or Jade Mind Nourishing elixirs? Chen Peng thought for a moment and then shook his head. There's no Body Reinforcement pill or Jade Mind Nourishing elixir, but we found 1 Ice Heart Purity pill and 2 White Tiger Essence elixirs. But you mentioned advanced cultivation resources? Yes. We found patterned grass and the 10,000 form chi fruit. Naturally, for martial artists, spiritual pills are indispensable items. They can be manufactured or occur naturally. They're usually expensive and hard to acquire, but their effects are permanent. But as previously mentioned, they're difficult to obtain and costly, which means not every martial artist has access to them. That's why cultivation resources were developed. The stark difference between them and spiritual pills is the price. Cultivation resources are much cheaper, and while their effects are temporary, they also have virtually no side effects. So the majority of martial artists seek out cultivation resources instead. Some are made by apothecaries. Others are acquired from reclusive physician-like figures with near-mythical status. Ordinary cultivation resources are typically only effective for martial artists in the realm of refined qi. But advanced cultivation resources are a different matter. They're highly effective for martial artists preparing to enter the realm of heaven and earth, those who have reached the 5 foundation pillars, and those who are already in the heaven and earth realm. For someone barely at the level of Yang Guangli Hyun to have acquired the highest grade resources, what level did you say Ice Snow Sword Scar was at? He's at 3 flower purification, and the sect master of the jurisdiction sword sect which Ice Snow Sword Scar belongs to, he's a 5 foundation pillar master, and he's currently in seclusion, right? Yes. The picture started to come together. Chen Peng, yes, Lord Branch Master. The spiritual pills and advanced cultivation resources I mentioned, deliver them to my quarters, then summon General Manager Sung and have him begin categorizing the rest of the items. Yes, I'll take care of it. Xiao Unwai's gaze swept across the branch members. It was a curious sight. Among those who met his eyes, a few flinched as if guilty, while others wore expressions like they'd made a decision. To anyone, it would have looked suspicious. Xiao Unwai smiled faintly. Return to your posts, all of you. Lord Branch Master, aren't you returning? There's somewhere I need to stop by. Go on. Yes, sir. Turning his back, Xiao Unwai began walking at a leisurely pace. The world of martial artists is cruel. Power reigns supreme. In a martial world, the words of the strong are law, and their actions define order. There's one obvious, rarely contested standard used to determine who qualifies as strong. Cultivation realm. It begins with the foundational 3 realms of the body, followed by the 4 realms of refined qi, where one learns to control energy. Next comes the 4 realms of heaven and earth, which involve opening the upper danjian and manipulating natural energy. Finally, the apex, the 5 realms of the martial god. In the martial world, every so-called strong individual belongs to the 5 realms of the martial god. Reaching even the first of those stages, unity of heaven and man, is enough to be considered a powerful figure. Those who go beyond, into manifestation of the infinite, Tao transformation and true authority, or vast emptiness beyond form, are revered wherever they go. And the final step in the martial god realms, sovereign of primordial oneness, is the level where contenders for supremacy over the entire world emerge. Even now, at this moment, and even at the time of my death, only about 100 people in all the countless millennia of Zhang Yuan's history have ever reached it. Of course, that 100 or so is based on what I know. There are rumors of an even greater realm, the 3 realms of pre-heaven, but I know little about that. I've never reached it, nor have I seen anyone who has, though I've stirred the hornet's nest before. Their behavior pissed me off, so I burned their peach blossom sanctum to the ground. Smashed the bloodstone. The blood sect was N-O-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456G Cyrillic letter 4BBT. Official version, about to offer them, and wiped out the Thunder Vein demon sect that used to clean their boots. To be honest, I did want to see them once, but no matter what I tried, they never revealed themselves. It's not that they don't move personally, it's that they can't move. That's everything I know. It was always their subordinates who acted in their name. Anyway, I lived like a madman, and I suppose in this life I'll do the same. Saying I have no regrets is true from my own perspective, but to others, my actions probably look like nonsense. I don't need to justify that to anyone, just like now. I saw a man ahead of me. Around his waist was a sash. It symbolized a first-rank tie of the Beggars' Union. A freshly initiated disciple has no sash and is called a white cloth beggar. Upon promotion, they receive their first sash and become a first tie. From there, with each rank, they receive another sash, second tie, third tie, and so on. At third tie, one becomes a branch leader of a small region. Fourth tie governs a larger district. At fifth tie, one manages several branches or becomes a protector of the central hall. Sixth tie manages multiple central halls. Seventh tie becomes an elder of the main headquarters. Eighth tie is an heir to the sect leader, and ninth tie signifies the head of the Beggars' Union. Exactly. The Beggars' Union. An intelligence network disguised as a band of beggars. They roam every corner of the land, and the everlasting snow mountains were no exception. The first Thai beggar saw me and his eyes lit up. "How may I help you? Is your branch leader inside?" The branch leader, no, I don't think so. Not here. Yes, I'm pretty sure he's not. Do you know who I am? The first Thai looked me up and down with an odd expression, then smiled faintly. I have no idea. The Beggars' Union is supposed to handle intelligence. You're not even a newly inducted white-tied member, your first Thai, and you don't know who I am? How am I supposed to interpret that? Well, I don't know. Is there really anything to interpret? Our branch leader isn't here right now, so you'll probably have to come back later. A soft smile formed at the corner of my lips. I was about to speak again, but the voice of the first Thai by my ear made me stop. As you surely know, this is a branch of the Beggars' Union. I can relay your message up the chain if you want, but you should just go back for today. I took a single step forward and spoke in a quiet voice. I'll say this once. Listen carefully. Sial Unwai, branch master of the Snow Compression Branch, has business with Chu Yuijai, the branch leader of the Beggars' Union in Snow Compression. Go deliver the message. Now, the first Thai furrowed his brow. Man, what's with you? I said he's not here, just go already. What kind of place is the Beggars' Union? Forget intelligence, that's secondary. They're parasites, plain and simple. A domain of the Beggars' Union? Maybe that exists somewhere in this world, but not here in Snow Compression. This bastard doesn't know his place, doesn't know who outranks him. So drunk on some laughable sense of authority that he can't even think straight. Continuing this conversation is a waste of time and of mercy. I raised my foot and kicked the first Thai hard in the left thigh. Thud. With a sharp sound, the first Thai cried N-O-V-Y-8, original source, out, and staggered backward. I immediately reached out with my left arm, grabbed him by the hair, and yanked his head forward. I'll ask again. Is the branch leader inside? Why, yes, he is. Then why did you say he wasn't? That's, and your tone was disrespectful. Do I look like someone beneath you? If you want, I can relay your message up. I tightened my grip. You lowlife leeching off Snow Compression. I'm a disciple of the Beggars' Union. He cut me off, but I wasn't particularly offended, honestly. So, attacking me is the same as attacking the Beggars' Union. And Snow Compression's already in chaos. Do you really want to make enemies of the Beggars' Union, too? Let go already. He was desperate. Everyone knows the 9 great sects, and the Beggars' Union is the last group to carry on that lineage. Even after the millennial chaos wiped out their history and martial arts, they barely managed to survive and rebuild. Picking a fight with them would be outright insane. Exactly, only someone completely insane would dare do it. The Beggars' Union, I heard you. The first Thai's face brightened, thinking I'd back down at the name. But my next words turned that hope to despair. I was just going to break an arm or two, but now I can't let it go that easily. W what? Turning something that should have been a slap into a life-or-death situation. That's a talent in itself. Using the name of the Beggars' Union to threaten me, that I won't let slide, I extended my left arm and placed a hand on his shoulder, then applied pressure. Crunch. Gah! I wasn't about to stop there. I threw him to the floor, stomped on his left arm, then stomped on both legs. Crunch. Crack. The sounds of bones snapping followed one after another, and the first Thai who had been screaming at first finally passed out. Honestly, it was probably for the best. I grabbed his hair and started walking. A door appeared across the hall. I kicked it open and tossed the unconscious first Thai inside without a care. The room exploded in commotion. Who are you? What the hell is this? I silently looked around the room. The shouting began to die down. In the farthest corner, a man writing something on paper looked up and met my gaze. 3 cords were tied around his waist. That was the man, Chu Yuijai, branch leader of the Beggars' Union's Snow Compression branch. He spoke. What's the branch master of Snow Compression doing here? And his sentence trailed off as his eyes flicked to the first Thai sprawled on the floor, then he continued in a subdued tone. You turned one of our boys into a goddamn vegetable. That's a bit of an exaggeration. I didn't kill him. Sure, I shattered his limbs, but I didn't sever his life as a martial artist. I've broken enough bones to know exactly how to do it without causing permanent death. Not that I had any intention of explaining myself to a bunch of beggars. Without a word, I pulled out a chair in front of Chu Yuijai and sat down. Chu Yuijai, no matter who you are, even if you're the branch master of Snow Compression, I'm a 3-tied officer of the Beggars' Union. Show some resp. If you talk down to me again, I'll kill you. Chu Yuijai stopped mid-sentence, furrowed his brow, but I didn't care. I'll kill not just you, but every last beggar in this building, every parasite near Snow Compression dead. Heh. That first Thai, he was just dumb. That's why I let it go with a few broken bones, but my patience ends here. Understood? Chu Yuijai, who had been glaring at me with cold eyes, gave a strained laugh. I understand. It seems our branch master is very angry today. I've clearly committed a grave discourtesy. Please accept my apology. He even gave me a martial salute, which I ignored. His eyes were still cold. That smile, nothing but protocol, I asked in a quiet voice. We found the ledgers in Yawun Sang's residence. At that, Chu Yuijai's face contorted. Typical 3-Thai, his ability to control his expression was abysmal. If he were at least a 4-Thai, he might have kept his mask on. In any case, there were some interesting names in those ledgers. Were there? Chu Yuijai, over the past 6 years, you engaged in various dealings with Yawun Sang and took 50 gold coins and 1,000 silver. I'm here to collect. There must be some kind of misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Yes. Like the misunderstanding where you shattered the limbs of our precious first Thai on your way in. I burst out laughing. You've got it all wrong. Excuse me? That first Thai, he knew exactly who controls this region, and still pretended he didn't know me. He lied and said you weren't inside even though you were, and then he had the audacity to threaten me using the name of the Beggars' Union. Apparently, he hadn't realized it had gone that far. Chu Yuijai's face stiffened. Ordinarily, I would have killed him, but I let him off with just broken limbs. That was me showing mercy. You should be grateful for that mercy, don't you think? And since you're part of an intelligence organization, you must know this already. When mercy is repeated, some fools start to mistake it for entitlement. So don't expect anything more from me. Chu Yuijai looked at me with frozen eyes. Staring back at him, a thought suddenly came to me. I forgot to mention, if you deny that your name was in the ledger, I'm going to kill you. Ha! And if you refuse to return the money, I'll kill you anyway. You're really out of control. I can't understand how you're acting like this even knowing who I am. I belong to the Beggars' Union. I crossed one leg over the other. Understanding. That's funny. What is? Isn't this conversation right now happening between you and me? Then why do you keep bringing up the Beggars' Union like it means something? And you, Branch Master, aren't you still enjoying the shine of the everlasting Snow Palace's legacy? Legacy. That's an amusing word choice. So you've known all along and still treated me like garbage. The branch master's alive and well, and yet you and that mutt conspired to make him a puppet while skimming a fortune in bribes. And now you have the nerve to feed me some pathetic excuse. The smile faded from my lips. Chu Yuajai? Yes. I won't say it twice. Bring every single coin listed in the ledger. And if I say no, I shook my head. You really like making me repeat myself. I told you what would happen if you refused. Don't tell me you can't pay. I can't. You can't, huh? Fine, then I'll collect it myself. What? There was no need for more words. I kicked the table straight at him. Bang! With a crash, the table slammed into Chu Yuajai's solar plexus. Gah! I shot my right fist toward him. In that instant, his eyes lit up. Chu Yuajai's current cultivation realm. The first stage of the 4 realms of refined Qi, Yang Radiance appears. As expected of a practitioner of Yang Radiance appears, he sprang to his feet and reached out, grabbing my right fist. This bastard. The illegitimate brat's lost his damn mind today. Yes, my right fist was caught. No, that's what I let him think. I reached out with my left arm, grabbed his wrist, and spun my body. Chu Yuajai's body lifted clean off the ground and crashed into the floor. Boom! Letting out a small groan from the pain in his back, Chu Yuajai's expression twisted in panic. Understandable, my knee was already driving down toward his face. He quickly rolled to the side, dodging the blow. How typical. I don't blame anyone for doing what they must to survive. There's no such thing as a good or bad technique when it's a matter of living. That applies to me as well. If it means killing the opponent, I'll do anything. He was only in the 3 realms of the body, yet he thought he could wrap this up today. That confidence must have come from somewhere. I pulled a dagger from my belt and charged forward. Chu Yuajai had put some distance between us, but one of the beggars stood in my path. I didn't hesitate. I drove the blade straight into the man's throat. Gah! I twisted the dagger hard. With a crack, the nameless beggar let out his last breath. You bastard! Chu Yuajai screamed and ran toward me. I ripped the dagger out and flung the corpse at him. Again, Chu Yuajai panicked. He dodged to the side, and when he turned his head back around, my dagger was already flying toward his neck. And no. Shulk. I drove the blade into Chu Yuajai's throat and shoved it in deep, not a single inch off, right in front of the cervical vertebrae. You know, I really hate trash like you beggars. KHHHK? I've met countless bastards like you over the years, and most of them were just like you, leeches who didn't even recognize the hand that fed them. I gripped the handle tighter. Etch this into your soul. In your next life, don't bark if you're not ready to bite. Without hesitation, I twisted the blade sideways. Crack, Chu Yuajai's neck snapped. As I looked down at his crumpled corpse, I found myself thinking, not quite enough. The dagger I'd used was a cheap one anyway. I was going to toss it, might as well make good use of it. I flipped my grip and stabbed the blade straight into Chu Yuajai's skull. Thud. The dagger was buried nearly to the hilt. I let go and turned my head. The beggars were staring at me with fear in their eyes. I ignored them. Who's the deputy branch leader? One man raised his trembling hand. Me. It's me, name, Jang Siok. Jang Siok? No, sir, just Jang Siok. Jang Siok, huh? Starting today, you're the branch leader. Me. The previous branch leader is dead. Naturally, the deputy should take over, don't you think? Why, yes, that's right. I walked toward him. Jang Siok stumbled backward on shaky legs until his back hit a bookshelf. With nowhere else to run, his face collapsed into despair. Smiling, I placed a hand on his shoulder. You've been promoted. Yes, sir. Congratulations on becoming the branch leader. So tell me, who do you think owns Snow Compression? Do you want the honest answer? I nodded, and Jang Siok spoke aloud the truth everyone knew but never dared to say. The true owner is Lord Xiao Yungchen of the everlasting Snow Palace. My father, the Lord of the Palace. Xiao Yungchen, sovereign of the frozen heavens. Officially, Lord Xiao Yungchen is the master of snow compression. But in practice, I believe the one who governs this place is the branch master of the snow compression branch. He wasn't wrong. The owner of snow compression wasn't me, it was my father. I'd only been delegated authority to manage it. So technically, I wasn't the owner, but I wasn't not the owner either. I stood somewhere in the middle. Claiming ownership wasn't exactly false. This was my domain to oversee, and not every commander is also the administrator. Good answer. Thank you. At the very least, you're better than the filth rotting over there. That, too, I appreciate. So then, what are you going to do about my money? Jang Siok swallowed hard, but he began speaking as if he had already prepared a plan. First, I'll raid Chu Yuajai's residence over there. But do you think all the money will still be there? No, I doubt it. Everyone knows Chu Yuejai's been offering bribes to higher-ups in the Beggars' Union. At best, he'll only have a portion left. Then how do you plan to make up for the shortfall? Zhang Xiok was a quick thinker. Turning a crisis into an opportunity isn't easy. But there are always those who try. Zhang Xiok was one of them. We're the Beggars' Union. I will offer the Union's intelligence network to you, sir. Sir, huh? If you don't like the title, it's not that I dislike it. So you're saying you'll compensate the remaining balance with information? Yes, we usually charge a fee for intelligence, but we won't charge the full rate. At most, we'll reduce it by 50%. At minimum, 30. We'll deduct that from the amount owed. I like that. I gave his shoulder a friendly pat. To celebrate your promotion, I'll give you a gift. Whatever it is, I'll gladly accept it. Write a detailed report about everything that happened here today and send it to your higher-ups. Excuse me? I mean, don't twist the situation or try to excuse anything. I broke the first tie's bones. I killed that nameless beggar, and I killed Chu Yuejai. When the Beggars' Union sends someone to investigate, and they will, you'll tell them everything exactly as it happened, and send them to me. Understood. I turned and walked away. The beggars cleared the path without needing to be told. Just as I reached the entrance, I stopped and turned my head like I had just remembered something. When you bring the money to the snow compression branch, bring along a piece of intelligence good enough to tempt me. I'll do my best to prepare something. It was then, just as I was about to return to the branch. Zhang Xiok swallowed hard, bowed formally with a martial salute, and said, "Safe travels." How polite. If you're going to leech off someone else's money, you'd best have at least that much tact and courtesy. I walked away without another word. Xiao Unwai returned to the branch, his long coat soaked in blood. He stepped inside silently. Chenpeng sat on the floor, wounded. 4 branch members were with him, all showing signs of damage. And standing nearby, gasping for breath as though he'd run a marathon, was Inspector Xiang. Xiao Unwai glanced at each of them in turn, then looked toward the center of the room, where the recovered items were piled neatly. As if this was all expected, as if it had gone exactly how he wanted, Xiao Unwai moved without hesitation. "Inspector Xiang?" "Yes, young master. Is the sorting done?" "That's not the issue right now. To me, it is." "Is the sorting done?" "Yes." "It's finished." Inspector Xiang handed him a crisp, freshly prepared bundle of documents. Xiao Unwai took the papers, walked over to the goods, and began comparing what was written to what lay before him. Everyone fell silent, and Xiao Unwai got to work. He examined the pills carefully and asked, "What about the cultivation pills I mentioned earlier?" "We placed those in your quarters." "I see." Xiao Unwai shifted his gaze back toward the stack of goods and picked up a dagger and a sword. It was the cold ice dagger and the snow-white sword. The cold ice dagger was, just as the name suggested, a blade imbued with a chilling energy. Once it pierced the body, cold would naturally spread from the wound outward. It was classified as a mid-grade weapon on the market. A shame there was only one, but it was fine. The snow-white sword was forged from cold ridge jade crystal. It wasn't quite a legendary blade, but it wasn't a common one either. Very practical. For a martial artist in the 4 realms of refined qi, it was more than adequate. Xiao Unwai quietly planted the snow-white sword into the ground and turned his eyes to Chenpeng. "Chenpeng?" "Yes, branch master. Looks like we're short on branch members." Of course they were. They'd all fled. Xiao Unwai had been treated like a scarecrow for 6 whole years. The fact that some lowly first tie from the Beggars' Union had dared to speak casually to him, and that their branch leader had done the same without hesitation, was all the proof needed. If only 2 of the branch members who had followed Yawun Sang had died, that would have been more suspicious. Of the 18 branch members aside from Yawun Sang, all but 5 had been his loyal dogs. The 2 who died earlier had only been involved because of matters related to the Chengguan Trading Company. The rest had been busy helping Yawun Sang with various affairs, embezzling funds, exploiting their positions, chasing their own gain. That was why they'd looked so afraid when Xiao Unwai found the ledgers. Chenpeng responded, "They ran away. I figured." "You knew." Xiao Unwai offered a small smile and sat down under the eaves. "A new system needs to be built, and putting unverified men in positions of trust would be sheer stupidity. 11 had fled in total. There seemed to be a few things missing from the inventory. We tried to stop them, but we couldn't block everything." "I see." Xiao Unwai crossed one leg over the other. "Stop standing around, come here." Chenpeng stepped forward first, followed by the other 4 branch members. Xiao Unwai asked, "Why are you living as branch members in snow compression?" Each had their reasons. The salary was decent. Even as the lowest rank, they could still learn martial arts from the everlasting Snow Palace. In the end, they were all martial artists. And what martial artist doesn't crave stronger techniques? The world is vast. But in that vastness, to find opportunity, that's like plucking a star from the sky. I'm giving you that opportunity now. All 5 branch members looked up at Sial Unwai, along with Inspector Siong, still sitting in the corner. 200 years ago, there was a lone wanderer who stirred the martial world. His quiet voice carried a subtle weight. His name was Han Chial, a man like a wolf. His martial arts, too, were like a wolf's. He paused, then began to chant a verse in a soft, measured tone. The bright moon and myriad stars reveal a cold gleam. A pack of wolves roams the skies, forever cleaving the void. All creation falls silent, and the whistle of wind rises. A single sword seals the heavens, never to return. As the chant continued, the branch members' eyes widened. They were martial artists, and because of that, they understood. That verse was no ordinary mantra. Not only did it hold the secrets of ascension, it reeked of an aggressive, battle-oriented martial art. Clearly not something anyone could learn or even know of, and oddly enough, Inspector Siong, who was widely believed to be an ordinary civilian, sat with his mouth agape. As if he recognized the verses, as if he understood them, but Sial Unwai paid him no mind. He simply continued, calm and unwavering. The line between success and failure is thinner than a strand of hair. The world has reached its present state through countless cycles. The lonely howl of a wolf echoes beneath the moon, and cold frost cleaves through the sky. This is the heaven-slaying wolf star technique, an ascension martial art made up of 3 forms. Sial Unwai's eyes slowly moved from one branch member to the next. I want to test you. I want to see how faithfully you obey orders. Whether you can raise your blades against those who were your comrades until yesterday, but are now proven traitors. None of them needed clarification. Track down and kill every last one of the deserters. Be branch master. Don't bother bringing me their limbs. Cut off their heads or bring them back alive and retrieve everything they stole. Chinpeng was sharp. He set his jaw with resolve. The other 4, though shaken, also sensed what this meant. A chance. Avenge this betrayal and return with all 11 heads, and I will teach you the 3 forms of the heaven-slaying wolf star technique. You'll need cultivation pills as well, of course. Sial Unwai pointed toward the pile of goods. There are pills and resources stacked right there. If you satisfy me, you'll receive a reward that matches your worth. Understood? Yes, sir. Your eyes have changed. I like that. Go at your command. Chinpeng and the rest sprinted out like madmen. Their faces were those of men who had seized a rare chance, and who had no number NOVYALIGHT number intention of letting it slip through their fingers. The branch fell silent in an instant. Sial Unwai spoke. Inspector Siong. Why, yes, young master. How long are you going to sit there like that? Ah, forgive me. Inspector Siong quickly rose and approached Sial Unwai. Do you have anything you'd like to say? There were no casualties. Was that your doing, Inspector Siong? Yes, I stopped it with everything I had. It was truly fortunate. With everything you had. Sial Unwai let out a quiet laugh as he repeated the word. Everything you had? Sure, let's go with that. Inspector Siong's expression turned peculiar. You're really strange today, young master. In a good way or a bad one? I'm not sure. I don't think I'm in a position to judge. And why not? Pardon? As a person, it's only natural to make judgments in all things. That's what the word subjective usually refers to. Even tools are capable of making judgments. I asked a question. Is it in a good way or a bad one? I think it's in a good way. At that, Sial Unwai smiled, but Siong continued speaking. Still, I'm concerned. Concerned about what? You don't seem to look back very often. Then I suppose you'll have to stand behind me. Inspector Siong didn't respond right away, and Sial Unwai didn't bother pressing him any further. You went after the Beggars' Union too, didn't you? I did. How many did you kill? Hard to say, I usually don't keep count, but this time, 2, I think. Did you kill the branch leader as well? I did. What exactly are you planning to do? He smiled faintly. Is this snow compression branch the Beggars' Union's land? No, it's not. They're parasites, plain and simple. What do you think happens when beggars who live off scraps start acting like they own the place? What does happen? You beat them to death. That staff they carry, the dog-beating staff, was originally used to strike dogs that harassed beggars. But if the beggar holding it starts acting more like a dog than a man, what then? You help them come to their senses. By killing them. If they've done something worth dying for, then they die. This is the martial world, isn't it? Just as he finished speaking, Sial Unwai rose from his seat. Do you intend to kill all the branch members too? Sial Unwai slowly, NOVYL Cyrillic letter 456 ge HT, don't copy, read here, turned his head. Forget the Beggars' Union. Among the men currently out pursuing the deserters, the highest-level martial artist is at the realm of heaven and earth. Same goes for the deserters. There's no one above that. We're outnumbered. Do you really believe the branch members will manage to retrieve the supplies and kill all the deserters? The meaning behind Inspector Siang's question was clear. Why did you force them into a death trap instead of giving them a chance? From the very start, Sial Unwai had anticipated everything. The value of the supplies, the spiritual pills, the cultivation resources, money. Bluntly put, he didn't give a damn about any of it. Even if he lost it all, it wouldn't matter. What he valued even less than all of that was other people's lives. Do you think I made the wrong decision? Let me ask you something. When I was treated like a scarecrow, what did they do? I remember it being about 6 years. In that entire time, they stood by and watched. Sure, the branch members changed a few times, but whether it was many times or few, and whether it was many men or not, the fact remains, they turned a blind eye. I'm sure they each had their reasons, but that doesn't mean they deserve to be embraced. Why the hell should I take in people like that? But I believe true rule comes with acceptance. True acceptance means understanding their past mistakes, forgiving them, and giving them another chance. Don't you think that's what true leadership is? Sial Unwai paused, considering Siang's words. His eyes turned serious. It sounds like your idea of acceptance is to embrace everyone regardless of their past. You're chasing an ideal. Young master, the acceptance I know is different from yours. Acceptance isn't about protecting the weak. It's judgment passed down by the strong. It's the power to decide whether they deserve to live or to die. That is true acceptance. So you'd best abandon that sweet fantasy of yours. At the very least, I didn't kill them outright. I gave them a chance. I need them. I need hands and feet that will obey my every word. Even if they were comrades who shared meals with you just yesterday, if they turn traitor and I give the order to kill, then I need a blade that will strike them down without the slightest hesitation. At Sial Unwai's words, Inspector Siang fell silent, a troubled expression crossing his face. Sial Unwai continued, You asked if they'd be able to kill every last one of the deserters. I don't know. I don't know whether they'll return after killing them all, or if they'll be the ones who end up dead instead. But this is the martial world. And the martial world is a stage where only those who prove themselves survive. If they all die, then that's all they amounted to, not even worth remembering. But if they manage to come back alive, I might consider giving them a chance. And if they're the ones who die, what will you do about the deserters? They'll all be dead before long. How can you be so certain? I plan to hire assassins. There are about 2 assassin organizations near Snow Compression. I'll put out a contract with both of them. Young master, and I'm thinking of offering them a little incentive. The deserters stole a great deal from this place, but I'm not planning to claim any of it. Whether they torture them or whatever else, it doesn't matter. So long as they recover the stolen items, it'll count as a bonus reward on top of the original fee. In other words, the deserters won't even have the luxury of a quick death. He rose from his seat. I'll be training. Don't let anyone inside. Understood. Someone from the Beggars' Union or the Chengguan Trading Company will probably show up today. You'll meet with them. If their proposals or information check out, go ahead and proceed. As for the branch members, I doubt they'll be back by the end of the day, but just in case, stay on alert. Yes, sir. Sial Unwai turned to head inside when, Young master, may I ask, how you came to know Han Chial's martial art? So many questions today. I apologize. You're curious about the source? Yes, Sial Unwai answered without the slightest hesitation. I found it in the mountains. I'm sorry. More precisely, at the base of a cliff on Mount Hweisang. There was a skeleton there and carved into the stone wall before it. Was the heaven-slaying wolf star technique. He tilted his head slightly. Does that answer your question? Yes. With that, Sial Unwai stepped inside, and Inspector Siang silently watched his back as he disappeared from view. Now, the memories from his previous life soaked through Sial Unwai's entire being. A familiar sensation. That subtle tremble at the moment the middle dantian opens. Sial Unwai remembered it clearly. A path he had walked once before. He was simply walking it again. When emptiness and substance merge, true void is born. When good and evil intertwine, the supreme Tao is attained. The pure nature of pre-heaven joins with the force of the blood demon, and together they transform, revealing the hidden mystery. Though faint, a distinct trace of false-true vital chi began to stir within Sial Unwise body once again. The same energy he had wielded countless times in his past life. But this current body was weak. The amount of chi couldn't even match a fraction of a fingernail. And yet, even that small quantity felt like a vessel holding the force of a mighty river. It was fine, truly fine. Sial Unwai recalled the Grand Void immortal blood-heart technique in his mind. The profound blood of the Grand Void connects to all principles. As the incantation rang through him, a wave of realization followed. It didn't matter that the vessel was small. The path to the Tao had an order. Opening the first gate alone was enough for now. Pre-heavenly blood transforms into true void. With a dull resonance, the middle dantian opened. Two lights began to rise, just as in his previous life. In that fleeting moment when purity and sharpness coexisted, a faint light dyed Sial Unwise consciousness. All laws returned to the one, revealing the great Tao. The light blended in perfect harmony, a small change but the beginning of a much greater current. False-true vital chi began to flow through his meridians. His blood vessels were still murky and his dantian was cramped, but that was fine. Those who walk the Tao never rush. Moonlight illuminated his body. Memories from his past life and the limits of his current flesh. Bridging that gap was the task that lay before him now. It would be a long road. Sial Unwai opened his eyes. He had stepped into the first stage of the four realms of refined chi. Yang radiance appears. Stepping out of my quarters, I smiled faintly as the cold wind brushed against me. It had been a while since I felt this refreshed. Compared to the level I'd reached in my previous life, this was the lowest of the low, barely a step off the ground. And yet I didn't mind. Reaching this stage meant I'd opened my middle dantian, which also meant I could, however faintly, wield false-true vital chi. That was enough. I threw the white tiger celestial robe over my shoulders. It wasn't just excellent for insulation. It was also Novelight, a subtle mark of my bloodline from the everlasting snow palace. I sat by the entrance of my quarters and looked up at the sky. A full moon hung above, not just night, dawn. That time when almost no one was awake. I wondered how long I'd been inside. At the very least, it had to have been over a day. I sat quietly, letting the night wind wash over me. Half a watch passed, an entire watch, then two. Someone began trudging up from the path beyond the gate. It was Chenpeng, drenched in blood. He silently laid down 3 heads in front of me along with a small bundle. Then, wordlessly, he knelt. He had always looked a bit dim, but it seemed he was surprisingly capable when it mattered. Chenpeng said nothing. I said nothing. Another watch passed like that. Then the 4 remaining branch members returned, each carrying 2 heads. All 5 had suffered injuries, but they returned alive, with the heads of the traitors. And of course they recovered the stolen supplies. I watched them in silence. In this bitter cold, their eyes were still sharp and clear. Now this was satisfactory. I was finally convinced. These men were good enough to serve as my hands and feet. But before I could truly use them, their current levels left me utterly dissatisfied. I spoke quietly. "Well done." The 5 branch members raised their heads and looked at me. "To be honest, I didn't expect you to kill them all. Yet not only did you come back alive, you completed the mission flawlessly. So I suppose it's time I keep my end of the deal." Their eyes gleamed with anticipation. I looked each of them in the eye as I continued. The heaven-slaying wolf star technique will be compiled into its own manual and distributed later. But before that, I'm going to teach you the inner art required to wield that technique. The incantation is simple and the content is straightforward, so you'll memorize it here and now. There was no one nearby besides me and the 5 of them. I didn't know how good their memories were, but they'd remember this. They had to. What I'm teaching you is the heavenly image heart technique. At my words, all 5 of them tensed, focusing sharply. The essence of this technique lies in observing the natural order of heaven and earth and grasping its truths. Watch the movements of the heavens, feel the currents of the wind, understand the flow of water. I closed my eyes for a moment and then slowly opened them. The first step of cultivation is to sit in silence and observe everything around you. At first, you won't see anything, but as time passes, you'll begin to sense the subtle shifts in heaven and earth. I raised my hand and pointed into the empty air. A breeze, the drifting of clouds, a single snowflake, each of these holds the truths of nature. When you come to understand this, your inner power will break through to the next level. I began reciting the incantation, slowly and clearly. Observe heaven, examine earth, 10,000 phenomena take form. Let the heart merge with nature, never to perish. All sounds return to the heart and the Tao reveals itself. One thought connects to heaven, transforming into the formless. As my words ended, the air around us trembled faintly. The true value of this technique lies in refining the quality of your internal energy. Most people focus only on increasing its quantity, but that's surface-level strength. True power comes from qualitative growth. The eyes of the branch members gleamed. They already sensed the value of this inner art. And frankly, if they hadn't, they may as well have died outside. Heavenly image heart technique. At minimum, this was a heaven-earth grade cultivation art. Look at the sky, look at the ground, and everything in between. That is both the beginning and the end of this technique. After that, I explained in detail how to circulate their energy through the proper meridians while meditating, twice slowly, and then sent them all back inside. I turned my head slightly and glanced toward the pillar of my quarters. Inspector Siong. At that, Inspector Siong stepped out from behind the pillar. Eavesdropping isn't a very respectable habit. I didn't know you had a taste for it. I didn't mean to listen, but standing out here in the cold so long, I was worried. I laughed softly. What about the people from the Changwon Trading Company and the Beggars Union? They came by yesterday. No problems? None. The insurance contract was standard. As for the Beggars Union, well, as you might have expected, they brought information. Bingxial Jiamhyun Li Jichang has apparently caught wind of Yawun Sang's death. I see. Doesn't that scare you? Scare me? Bingxial Jiamhyun. He's a master of Samwa Meditation Hall, I scoffed. Someone once said this, that a master of Samwa is a warrior among warriors. You're talking about the 2 branch members who died. Unfortunately, while Samwa Meditation Hall is an impressive school, their masters aren't quite worthy of the title warriors among warriors. As impressive as your progress and accomplishments are, young master, I still don't believe you can face a martial artist of that caliber just yet. And why's that? I know you have plenty of experience, Inspector Siong, but I suggest you stop assuming your experience defines the entire world. That kind of attitude is usually called arrogance. Young master, also go bring some food to the ones inside. Tell them they've earned a full day of rest tomorrow. Inspector Siong fell silent for a moment. I figured I knew why. It was probably because of my tone, not my usual rigid tone, but a casual, familiar one. One I only used with him. I suppose it was natural for him to react like that. Still, this was more comfortable for me. He finally answered, Understood, but may I ask why you're not angry? Angry? I eavesdropped, the heavenly image heart technique. Even I could tell it wasn't ordinary. That's a heaven-earth grade cultivation art, isn't it? Probably higher ranked than the heaven-slaying wolf star technique, which itself is mid-tier within the heaven-earth grade. So, how did you even come by something that valuable? I looked up at the sky. Still freezing cold. It made sense. This region was heavily affected by the snow mountains, but even so, tonight felt especially frigid. So many questions. Should I answer them all at once? You don't have to if you don't want to. But you're curious, so I will. I smiled. How many years has it been since you've been by my side? About 16 years. 16 years. That's a long time. It is. You've been guarding me since I was a child. You were the butler of the main palace, weren't you? Yes, I was. Then when you were sent to snow compression, I followed and my position changed to inspector. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't let it slide, but you're different. You can eavesdrop, you can ambush me. Hell, you can stab me in the back if you want. If it were anyone else, I'd tear them apart on the spot. But if it's you, I smiled gently, it's fine, I trust you had your reasons. Why do you trust me that much? Is there a reason not to? Aren't you the person closest to me? Maybe. I suppose I am. Then what more reason do I need? Inspector Siong scratched his head. And for the record, the heavenly image heart technique, I created it. His eyes went wide. You created it? I broke down and restructured every technique I knew. That's how it was born. Back in the central blood sect, I raised countless disciples. The heavenly image heart technique was something I made to teach them. Thanks to it, the foundation of the sect grew solid, and we became the strongest sect in all of Zhongyuan, with hundreds of experts in the realm of heaven and earth. You're not even some legendary grandmaster. And you made that? Unfortunately, I've never once lied to you, Inspector Siong, never exaggerated, never downplayed. I only ever told you things exactly as they are. Whether you believe me or not, that's your business. I don't think I need to say more. So then, when do you think Bingxial Jiamhyun will show up? I heard he's absolutely furious, if he's fast today, if slow tomorrow at the latest. I nodded slowly. Looked like it was going to be a long day. Since we're on the topic, how's the situation with the mine? Well, it's the same as usual. The warriors from Yangyong are occupying it, interfering. I think it's only going to get worse. Sounds like the extraction of the cold jade crystals is being delayed. If all we're dealing with is a NOVELIGHT delay, we're lucky. We haven't been able to mine at all, actually. With Yawun Sang, who was receiving the crystals on a regular basis, dead, I'd say the damage is going to spread. Not just to the Chengguan Trading Company, but to the other merchants and local residents, too. The conclusion was simple. There was a lot to be done. I looked silently at Inspector Siong, and he offered an awkward smile. I'll go carry out the order you gave me earlier. He turned around to leave, but stopped after a few steps. And the supplies we had stored in the yard have all been moved to the warehouse. You must have worked hard. That's nothing, not even worth calling effort. Then since you've been working so hard, how about one more task? I pulled the ledger I had tucked inside my robe and tossed it lightly. Inspector Siong caught it, looking puzzled. It was the face of someone thinking, why are you handing this to me? It should list the people who were exploited under Yawun Sang's rule. Some of them are dead, some still alive. Separate them and return what's owed. All of it. Not all. Leave out the spiritual pills and cultivation resources. Why? Are you doing this? Because it happened while I looked the other way. This all started because of me. If I don't take responsibility, how am I any different from Yawun Sang? Understood. I'll identify the dead and the living and repay as much as possible. If it's not enough, take the remainder from my personal funds. Understood, young master. With a nod, I turned my gaze back to the sky. It was truly beautiful. Starting tomorrow, things would get very busy, so for now I intended to enjoy this brief moment of peace. The man with 4 knots on his belt, Wonsum, the branch leader of the Yangyong division of the Beggars' Union, suddenly burst out in rage. Sial Unwai, that son of a bitch. Next to him, the vice branch leader Jiang Gisen flinched, quickly adding, Sir, maybe don't say son of a bitch. It's Sial Yongchen's son. Sial Yongchen's. If Sial Unwai's a son of a bitch, then who's the bitch? As Jiang Gisen implied, it would be Sial Yongchen. Wonsum cleared his throat awkwardly and quickly changed his words. They say a tiger fathers dogs. Well, under the white tiger, a damn mutt's been born. Mutt wasn't the worst insult, honestly. Better to insult the kid than his father. He's illegitimate, right? Yes. He's a bastard. Figures. Sorry. That bastard kid probably just realized something, that with the everlasting snow palace behind him, he can run wild like a madman and no one will stop him. What a filthy. I mean, he's like a damn insect. That mongrel's gotten cocky, less than a dog. Even ripping him apart wouldn't be enough for a mutt like him. To be frank, Wonsum didn't give a damn whether Yangyong and the snow compression branch were at war or not. Let them fight all they want. But touching someone from the Beggars' Union, that was a different story. Arrogant little bastard. While Wonsum ranted furiously, Jiang Gisen quietly pulled out a cloth from inside his robe. It was filthy with old stains, but still necessary. Wonsum took it and wiped the bits of food stuck to his face. That bastard ice snow sword scar, why the hell is he venting on me, huh? Acting like a lunatic. Throwing his leftover food was a bit much. We may be beggars, but we're well past the point of eating scraps left on someone's plate. You think that's the point? Sorry. Click. And the head of the jurisdiction sword sect had to enter seclusion now of all times. The current head of the jurisdiction sword sect was a master of the 5-origin martial stage. He entered closed-door seclusion about a year ago and hadn't emerged since. If it went long, it could last for years. The issue was that during this period, the one exercising real authority over the sect was Ice Snow Sword Scar. Jiang Gisen cleared his throat and spoke. From the look of things, Ice Snow Sword Scar is going to visit the snow compression branch today. Shouldn't we do something about that? Of course we should. One of our 3 Thai members was killed. We can't just sit on our hands. So what will you do? What do you think? Isn't he near Yangyong right now? You mean? Yes, him, the vice commander of Sword Press City. Sword Press City managed all the small towns in and around Yangyong. Its commander was a 7 Thai member of the Beggars' Union, and the vice commander was a 6 Thai. A 6 Thai, Chen Sugeng. Jiang Gisen swallowed hard. Are you really going to call him? I am. That bastard brat's treating the Beggars' Union like garbage. Someone needs to tell him to watch where he lies down before he starts acting like he owns the place. That's true, and while we're at it, maybe we can squeeze a little something out of the everlasting snow palace too. Jiang Gisen didn't try to stop him. Honestly, there was no point. Wonsum wasn't the kind of man who listened to anyone once his mind was made up. And more than anything, he was obsessed with authority. If that Chinsugang guy told him to lick the food crumbs off his own face, Onesome would probably do it without hesitation. A man rotten with greed, this was clearly an opportunity to him. Jiang Gieson clicked his tongue inwardly. Who knew how this would turn out? Sialep was a small city. Actually, calling it a city was a bit much. But it didn't quite feel right to call it a village either. It sat somewhere in between, a place that didn't fully belong to either category. By contrast, neighboring Yangyong was undeniably a city. Administrative divisions were separated into province, Ju, district, Gun, and county, Hyun. All 5 nations in the martial realm followed this same structure. Officials were only dispatched starting at the county level, and below counties came towns, villages, and hamlets. Now, in the neighboring Yang Empire and the far-off Moon Laurel Nation, there were fortresses. Siang ranked above provinces, but the total number of those across both countries was 4 at most. It was a structural quirk unique to those 2 nations. Sialep, on the other hand, didn't belong to any country. It was land owned solely by the everlasting Snow Palace. That's why it was simply called Sialep. But if one were to force it into the usual classification, Sialep could be considered roughly equivalent to a village. Sialep Rai, and its neighbor Yangyong was Yangyong County. There was a difference in scale, but the real difference wasn't about size. It was about quality. The strongest expert in Sialep was someone at the level of Samwa Meditation Hall. But in Yangyong County, there were masters who had reached the 5-origin martial stage. More than 5 Samwa-level martial artists lived there too. And yet, Yangyong had never made a move to swallow Sialep. For one very clear reason. Because Sialep and myself, who resided in Sialep, carried the bloodline of the everlasting Snow Palace. Laying a hand on Sialep meant provoking the everlasting Snow Palace. And what kind of lunatic would ever try to touch a northern giant like that? They simply didn't have the power to mess with the frozen heavens. But watching closely from a distance, that was another matter. The palace didn't care about being checked. After all, a fair fight was a fair fight. A conflict with reason behind it was still a legitimate dispute. The situation here was simple. There were 2 mines between Sialep and Yangyong, the Chenggnung Mine and the Sialhin Mine. The Chenggnung Mine belonged to Sialep. It was clearly within our territory, and Sialep was the rightful owner. But the Sialhin Mine was a different story. It was located along the border between Sialep and Yangyong. Technically, it was supposed to be under joint administration, but that had never happened. Even that might have been tolerable. We could have simply gone and claimed half of the Sialhin Mine's share, or renegotiated the terms and resumed joint operations as agreed upon. But it had been 6 years. For 6 years, from the moment I arrived as the branch lord of Sialep, Yawun Sang had served as the acting branch lord. Though there had been multiple changes in the rank and file staff, that position had never once changed hands. For 6 years, even the Chenggnung Mine, which lay clearly inside Sialep's borders, had been under the de facto control of Yangyong's sects. The Sialhin Mine, too, was fully under Yangyong's grasp. It wasn't just a matter of getting robbed blind. We'd been turned into utter pushovers. Time to fix that. I arrived at the Chenggnung Mine with my subordinates. Mining was still in progress, but the people overseeing the workers looked entirely unfamiliar. One glance was enough to tell they weren't from Sialep. I walked straight toward them. They noticed me and their expressions immediately soured. I spoke curtly. "Explain." Chinpeng stepped forward from behind me and quickly opened his mouth. They're warriors from Yangyong. Judging by their uniforms, they're from the Long Sword sect. And yet they're managing the place? Yes, they're claiming quality control is necessary because impurities were found in the latest batch of cold jade crystals. Quality control, huh? And that excuse keeps changing. Sometimes they say they received intelligence about illegal smuggling and are conducting an investigation. Other times, it's about ensuring smooth trade between the regions, so they've taken on supervisory authority. There's no end to the reasons. I'm just a former figurehead, so my memory might be off, but has it always been like this? Yes, always. I paused in thought and asked. They're still mining. So who does the cold jade crystal they're digging up go to? To Yangyong. So let me get this straight. It's Sialep's mine, but Yangyong manages it. Yangyong's people are doing the mining. Yangyong transports and sells the minerals, and Yangyong profits from it. Chinpeng shut his mouth with an uncomfortable look. There was no need to say more. The situation was obvious. Even the records in the ledgers were worse than I imagined. This whole setup had been orchestrated by Yawun Sang and the sects of Yangyong. They bribed each other, shared the profits. If Yawun Sang had gone into business instead of martial arts, he probably would have become a tycoon. I lifted my gaze and stared at the men looking confused directly in front of me. So you're from the Long Sword sect? Yes. And you're overseeing things here? Yes. Why? Well, because that's how it's always been. Always, huh? You think this is Yangyong County? Look, we're warriors of the Long Sword sect. And since we've received intelligence that cold jade crystals with impurities were being circulated, we're conducting an investigation. Please come back tomorrow. Come on. What are you talking about? This mine belongs to Yangyong. Based on territorial maps, this mine is within Sialap. The original discoverers, the ones who first planted the flag, all of them were from Sialap. And yet you're spewing bullshit. So this mine belongs to Yangyong. You ready to take responsibility for those words? The warrior from the Long Sword sect paused to think, then smiled in an odd way. Ah, now I get it. Get what? You're here to ask for a share of the ore just like Yawun Sang used to. I'll report it up the chain and arrange a new round of negotiations soon. Unbelievable. You really don't get it, do you? The Long Sword sect, huh? Can't say I've ever heard of a sect like that in my life. Were you ever strong enough to throw your weight around like this? Are you insulting the Long Sword sect? I'm insulting it because it deserves to be insulted. Don't try to hide behind some half-baked fame. It's unpleasant to look at. I'll only say this once, so listen carefully. First, return every last coin you took from Yawun Sang. Second, remove your blockade. The man chuckled. Did the branch lord of Sialap eat something bad this morning? Are you insane? So that's a no? Obviously. Good, I'll just take back the 100,000 gold nyang you pocketed myself. What? What did you just say? His jaw dropped. The number sounded like utter nonsense, absurd beyond belief, but I didn't care. I already had Yawun Sang's ledgers, and I could forge the rest as needed. From here on out, I'd simply do what I always did. That's right. Do what I always did. Flash phantom piercing art. I drew the cold ice dagger from my waist and thrust it forward like lightning. Thwack. It pierced deep into the man's side. Gah! I yanked it out, reversed my grip, and drove it straight into his throat. His eyes quivered violently. He was begging me with them, begging to be spared. But I'd already given him the chance. Not just once, but several times. If you can't take it when it's handed to you, you're basically asking to be killed, and I planned to oblige. I twisted the dagger. With a sickening crunch, his neck snapped. I withdrew the blade, and his body collapsed to the ground. Only then did the warriors from the Long Sword sect, who had been occupying the Chengnu mine, seem to grasp the gravity of the situation. They started charging toward me. I sheathed the cold ice dagger and drew the snow-white sword. Some of the branch members moved to draw their swords as well. Stop! You don't draw! Sir, watch closely. This is the first form of the heaven-slaying wolf star technique, lone wolf soaring the heavens. I looked straight ahead. Two warriors were rushing at me. True to their sect's name, they carried massive longswords, but their level was pathetic. At best, beginning of the heaven stage. I gripped my sword and dashed forward. My lower dantian surged and my internal energy skyrocketed. No need to draw from false-true vital chi. That level of opponent wasn't worth it. My sword aura surged. The faint glow that had clung to the blade like moonlight instantly sharpened into icy frost. With a single sweep, the aura split into dozens of slashes and tore through the two warriors. SHHKRRKKKKKRRKKK. Ignoring their shredded corpses, I kept speaking calmly. Lone wolf soaring the heavens is about dividing a single sword aura into dozens. Once it's perfected, the power of each divided aura remains identical. Now 3 more were charging toward me. 2 more followed behind, 5 in total. I raised my sword horizontally and faced the first 3. Slowly, I gathered the chill of the air around me. The second form, moonlight, devours the sky. Without hesitation, I struck. Just one slash, but it howled through the air like a wolf crying out to the moon, and when the blade extended, the sword aura detonated in an instant. B-O-O-O-O. The 3 warriors were instantly reduced to pulp. The last 2 had only just realized what was happening. They froze in place. They looked terrified, but it didn't matter. Moonlight devours the sky may seem like nothing more than an upward surge of sword aura followed by an explosion. But it's not. The core of the technique is the detonation of atmospheric energy. From the moment, the sword begins moving to the moment it finishes. If you can control that explosion, amplify it at will, that's when the form is considered complete. Someone behind me let out an awed breath. I ignored it. The heaven-slaying wolf star technique was composed of 3 forms. I launched myself toward the 2 warriors who had recoiled in fear. This is the true core of the technique. Its third form, Frost Star, shatters the void. I unleashed the full extent of my inner strength. My chi burst outward like starlight in the night sky, then collapsed into a single point. I guided the condensed energy around my blade and swung lightly. A long sword sect warrior raised his sword to block. SHHK. His blade was cleaved in two. Boom! Everything the sword touched exploded in a chain reaction. I spun, driving my sword forward. Wah, wait! His words never finished. Thunk! My sword sank into his throat. A beat later, boom. His neck exploded. Blood splattered across my body. I flicked the gore from my blade and turned back around. Frost Star shatters the void, gathers the surrounding chi and the user's inner strength into one point, then detonates it. It seems simple, but of the three forms, it's the hardest to master and the most unpredictable. The reason was simple. Moonlight devours the sky required sweeping through space, scattering energy along the sword's trajectory, which naturally diluted its power. But Frost Star shatters the void, compressed that energy into a single strike and detonated it at once. The raw power was incomparable. You could even trigger the detonation before the blade landed, using it like moonlight devours the sky. From the enemy's perspective, it was practically impossible to predict or counter. That's why a mere three forms made the heaven-slaying Wolf Star technique a heaven and earth-rank martial art. Wiping the blood from my face, I continued speaking. As with all high-level techniques, once these core forms are fully mastered, the user can draw out power beyond their own stage of cultivation. For someone in the martial god stage, the amplification doesn't mean much. But against martial artists in the heaven and earth stage, it's devastating. I sheathed the snow-white sword and added, all martial artists, once they reach a certain stage, begin to ask themselves the same question. Chenpeng asked, and what's that? How do I draw out the maximum power from my current stage? The heaven-slaying Wolf Star technique gives an answer to that question, at least up to the heaven and earth stage. These three forms, though basic and complete on their own, can evolve depending on how you wield them. They're simply the foundational moves created by one man. Remember this, don't let the martial art consume you. How you wield it and the path you choose to follow is entirely up to you. Martial arts are tools. If you make the mistake of being consumed by a mere tool, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Thank you. I turned away. There had been 20 warriors from the Long Sword sect occupying this mine. I'd killed about 6 with my own hands, that left 14. Time to practice. Practice, sir. There, see, about 14 of them left. Someone somewhere audibly swallowed. One of the remaining warriors from the Long Sword sect cried out, spare us, we swear, we'll never set foot in Sialep again. I ignored him. Kill them all. The eyes of the branch members sharpened. If you're a martial artist, if you have even a shred of sense as a martial, N-O-V-E-L-I-G-H-T, artist, you'd know that every word I say, every action I demonstrate, is a stepping stone to growth. My branch members, at the very least, were smart enough to understand that much. With unwavering gazes, they shouted in unison, by your command! 5 branch members charged forward, and a storm of blood swept through the mine. I stood silently and watched it all unfold. Sialep was my land, and these arrogant bastards thought they could come here and dictate terms. I was going to collect on every debt they'd racked up over the years. If you've been wronged, then you ought to be paid back. That's only fair. Gratitude and resentment matter more than anything else. Repay grace with grace, repay hatred with vengeance. If you ignore that, you're unworthy to be called a person, let alone a martial artist. I may have committed countless insane acts in my life, but I've always lived as a human being, and I intend to keep living that way. This is how I live. It didn't take long to slaughter every last warrior from the Long Sword sect. All of Sialep's branch members were martial artists at the beginning of the heaven stage, and now they had access to a heaven and earth-rank mental technique, and had learned how to wield a heaven and earth-rank martial art. From what I'd seen, at least Chenpeng had the talent to climb all the way to the 5-origin martial stage without much difficulty. The others varied in potential. 2 of them stood out in particular. One was a small-framed man, the other slightly taller but still slim. Their names were Wanyang and Han Murin, if I remembered correctly. Based on how they fought, how they moved, how they absorbed and embodied martial arts, they could both potentially reach the heaven and earth stage. In short, they would dominate anyone at the same stage, and if they stayed focused, they'd even have a 30% chance of beating someone at the Yang Radiance Appears stage. No wonder martial artists chase after high-level techniques. There's always a reason behind that hunger. I looked straight ahead. The 5 branch members, soaked in blood, stared back at me with firm eyes. They looked confident, which was good to see, but don't let your guard down. Understood. You know the saying, pearls before swine. No matter how good your martial arts, mental technique, or equipment is, if you are flawed, it means nothing. All 5 swallowed hard. This was advice I had to give, not just as their branch lord, but as the one who taught them these techniques. Know your limits. Understand what you can and can't do. And if your strength falls short, then ask for help. Don't wait until arrogance rots your bones before you regret it. Chinpeng spoke quietly. Then, sir, I hope that someday you'll ask us for help too. Me? Yes, I chuckled. At your current level, you can't even cover my back. Then what level must we reach? Let's see. You'll probably need to reach the heaven and earth stage before you can even step on my shadow. Their eyes blinked in disbelief. I gave no further answer and simply walked forward. Keep training, catch up. Yes, sir. I walked toward the entrance of the Chengnung mine. There about 50 people were gathered, trembling in fear, porters and miners. Behind them lay a massive pile of cold jade crystals. Clearly, it had all been mined from inside. Who's in charge? A middle-aged man, still shaking, stepped forward. Name and affiliation. I'm Yang Dioksu of the Sangji Trading Company. You the overseer? Yes. And those behind you? Miners and porters hired by our company, Sangji Trading Company. Honestly, I'd never heard of them. Chinpeng stepped up beside me and whispered quietly. They're based in Yanyong County. The company's head is a former member of the Long Sword sect. That was extremely useful information. Xiao Unwai turned his head and looked at Yang Dioksu. He walked toward the man whose face was full of fear. This mine belongs to Sialap. What made you think you could dig here? Not only did you mine, but you even sold the ore and pocketed the money. You must have been ready to die for that. I was just following orders, he kicked without hesitation. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out as Yang Dioksu's chest caved in. The man was flung backward and slammed into the wall. He hacked up blood, trembling violently, then went limp. Xiao Unwai turned again. Miners and porters came into view. There were 48 miners in total and 20 porters. I plan to hire all of you. Everyone gasped, stunned. Clearly, that wasn't the answer they had expected. This was a fight between martial artists, between those in charge. None of you are martial artists. You're just ordinary people trying to get through each day. Even if I go too far at times, I still uphold a certain line. And this is that line, martial artists and civilians, those who bear responsibility and those who don't. These people were only doing a job for pay. There was no need to slaughter them all. Turns out the Chenggун Trading Company in Sialap is looking to hire miners and porters. If you're interested, step to the right. Some of them had guts. A man with a thick beard stepped forward and asked me directly, if we don't step out, will you kill us like you did Inspector Yang? I let out a short laugh. I promise I won't kill you. Oh, and come to think of it, I forgot to mention, if you relocate to Sialap today, you'll each be paid 3 silver taels. It didn't take long for them to make a decision. Every single miner and porter moved to the right. I quietly gestured behind me. Wanyang, come here. He was the smallest among the branch members, so small it was hard to believe he was even a man, and that's because he wasn't. She was a woman dressed as a man. She clearly wanted to be seen as a man, so I had referred to her that way. But right now, I needed him. Wanyang was one of the 2 men I had looked at earlier. Should I say he stood out? He shined. A gem I hadn't seen in a long time. I said to him, take the Cold Ridge jade crystals piled over there and deliver them to Chenggún Trading Company. And should I distribute 3 silver taels each from the branch's funds? I smiled. Unlike a certain someone, you don't need things repeated twice. Very convenient. Chinpeng flinched, and Wanyang gave a martial salute before turning around and starting to lead the miners and porters away. I watched them go, then opened my mouth again. The rest of you follow me? Chinpeng asked. Where are we going? Isn't it obvious? My gaze drifted toward the snow-covered hill. We're heading to the Xiaolhin mine. Beyond that hill and another ridge past it lay the Xiaolhin mine. Let's go. Yes, sir. Xiao Unwai and the branch members arrived at the Xiaolhin mine. And there they witnessed a very unexpected scene. Xiao Unwai smiled faintly. The other branch members looked confused. Signs of retreat were everywhere. Not a single person carried a sword, and all that remained were about 100 people and 500 to 600 june of Cold Ridge jade crystals, none of which were even properly loaded onto carts. The miners and porters had slumped to the ground as if they had given up completely. Some bore cuts and bruises on their faces and bodies. Among them, a man with long hair, scholarly in appearance and the least disheveled, looked up at Sial Unwai and smiled politely. It's an honor to meet the new ruler of Sialap, star of the everlasting snow palace. Star of the palace? Oh, it's a nickname I came up with. Do you not like it? Like it or not, if that's what people want to call me, I don't see the point in objecting. Sial Unwai stepped forward and faced the man directly. What's your name? My name is Han Siakyon. Your position? I'm a low-ranking inspector of the Universal Trading Company. A low-ranking inspector, huh? Mind explaining the current situation? Han Siakyon, as he had introduced himself, answered quietly. The man stationed here as manager was Supreme Inspector Joe Wallen of the Universal Trading Company. He had posted some martial artists from the Long Sword Sect and the Juryung Sword Sect here, but only a few. I'm sure you know why. Of course, it was obvious. Until now, no one had dared to touch Sialhin Mine or the Chengnung Mine. Sialap, there were insiders cooperating already, so there was no need to act openly. And the mines were located right between Yangyong and Sialap. The fact that there had been 20 Long Sword Sect martial artists stationed at Chengnung Mine was the real anomaly. Usually there were maybe 10, sometimes 20 at most. Their job was to monitor the miners, make sure they were doing their work properly, and more importantly, ensure they weren't stealing ore. In short, we heard that the Long Sword Sect had been annihilated at the Chengnung Mine. Supreme Inspector Joe Wallen immediately gave the order to N.O.V.Y.L. Yota GHT. Read the full story, retreat. And this is the result. Couldn't escape in time, or we were abandoned. You seem surprisingly calm. When you expect nothing, you're never disappointed. That's true, Han Siakyon smiled faintly. Take all of this Cold Ridge Jade Crystal with you, and Han Siakyon hesitated for a moment, then continued in a quiet voice. Please hit me hard in the face. Sial Unwai's eyes gleamed. That was an unexpected suggestion. I heard the person in charge at the Chengnung Mine was killed. Is that true? It is. Then right now I'm clearly the one in charge here. Everyone else ran. So you're begging for your life? Yes. I may be the one in charge, but I'm still just a low-ranking officer. I firmly believe that keeping me alive will be more beneficial to you than killing me. A smile formed on Sial Unwai's lips. A merchant bargaining with his own life. This is the best I can do. If I pass out, it'll look like I resisted, and the fact that the Cold Ridge Jade Crystals were taken will prove I did my duty. If I survive, I can plan for what's next. Han Siakyon paused in thought, then added, and the men with swords, none of them stayed to protect us. They didn't even look back. Do you know what they said before they ran? What did they say? They told us to carry all the ore. If they had time to say that, they could have carried some themselves. Bastards, nothing but thugs. Sounds like you weren't entirely without expectations. I won't deny it. I thought it was fine to push the miners and porters hard. If something happened, those guys were supposed to protect us. That's what I believed. But I was mistaken. When you see the world through rose-colored glasses, disappointment is inevitable. Is that so? It's not about your mindset. The world itself is like that. Reality is brutal, soaked in blood. Is that the kind of world you live in, branch leader? It is. That must be hard. Do I look like I'm struggling? Han Siakyon stared at Sial Unwai for a moment before shaking his head. I wouldn't know. You're far too deep for someone like me to judge. You mean me? I've heard it's been 6 years. If you mean the 6 years I spent as a puppet, then yes. You seem so different now, like you were preparing for this all along. Sial Unwai let out a dry chuckle. Preparing, huh? Do I really look that way? You've already clashed with the Juryung Sword Sect, the Long Sword Sect, and by extension Yangyong itself. But you show no concern. You must have a plan. It seemed the man had a big misunderstanding. I don't know what your plan is, but there must be allies of yours inside Yangyong too. Someone like you who's planned everything this far wouldn't leave that to chance. So I'll be blunt. Han Siakyon lowered his head slightly. I just want to live. Please take all the Cold Ridge Jade Crystal here and spare our lives. He never intended to kill them in the first place. All the ones worth killing had already fled. Who was left to execute? More than anything, Sial Unwai found himself liking this man, Han Siakyon. His assumptions were one thing, but more importantly, even in this situation, the man hadn't lost his composure. It was impressive, honestly. Even while begging for his life, he was already preparing his next move. More than that, he had drawn a clean line between himself and the Juryung Sword Sect. They abandoned us anyway. Take it all. Oh, right, before you do, like I said earlier, please hit me hard. To create justification? Yes, we want to make it look like it was stolen from us, nothing more. Sial Unwai stared quietly before tossing a question. You've been begging for your life this whole time, but you haven't once said what you can offer me in return. Ah, if I go along with your little game, what exactly do I gain? I'll provide you with constant intel. Intel? Yes. On the inner workings of the Universal Trading Company and what's happening in Yangyong. I thought you already assumed I had people planted in Yangyong. I still do. But when it comes to information, cross-verification is the foundation, isn't it? Unexpectedly, Han Xiaoqian was starting to look like raw ore to Sial Unwai. Unpolished but with potential. I've already had everything stripped from me by those bastards in Yangyong. I'll tell you everything. A man who draws a clear line between loyalty and gain, who thinks not only of survival but of what comes after. The Universal Trading Company. It had a grand name, but Sial Unwai had never heard of it before. Still, Han Xiaoqian, that name might be worth remembering. Are you satisfied with your current position as an inspector? Until today, I was somewhat content. But now, not really. Sial Unwai stared at him for a moment, then said plainly, one hit won't be enough. Pardon? You need to look like you almost died, only then will it seem real. Han Xiaoqian gave a bitter smile. So even to create justification, you need real skill, huh? Sial Unwai stepped forward. Han Xiaoqian shut his eyes tightly. Then at his ear, Sial Unwai whispered, there's only one inspector in the Sialap branch. Han Xiaoqian opened his eyes. If you want to swim in deeper waters, say so. He didn't even have time to respond. Crack. Sial Unwai's fist smashed into Han Xiaoqian's face with merciless force, and the man crumpled to the ground. Sial Unwai gave the order. Secure the Cold Ridge Jade Crystal. The moment he spoke, the branch members moved swiftly into action. Sial Unwai silently stared at the unconscious Han Xiaoqian. Not bad. Since his return, all he'd seen were people either running or begging. But this was the first time someone had made a clear-headed judgment in such a pressing situation. Of course, it wasn't perfect. But decisiveness and insight, that's what mattered. Those qualities could be refined. Before long, Chen Peng, having loaded all the Cold Ridge Jade Crystal, reported back to Sial Unwai. He answered crisply. We return? Yes, sir, Xiang Yangho. He had watched over Sial Unwai since childhood, a butler who had genuinely cared for him. When Sial Unwai was appointed as branch leader of Sialap, Xiang Yangho had followed him without hesitation. Usually referred to as Inspector Xiang, he was the only inspector of the Sialap branch and managed nearly everything that happened in Sialap. Because the branch existed in name only, he oversaw everything, from the distribution of basic cultivation resources and financial management to building repairs and even the upkeep of the gardens. It was well beyond what one man could handle, and yet, strangely enough, he managed it all without issue. There had never been a single financial mishap within the Sialap branch. That alone was proof. Even he found the current situation baffling. No, if he were being honest, it was driving him crazy. On one side, dozens of unfamiliar people were arriving with several hundred June of Cold Ridge Jade Crystal. On the other side stood a man, arms crossed, silently watching the scene unfold. That man was Li Jicheng. Nicknamed Frozen Snow Sword Scar, elder of the Juryang Sword Sect, one of Yangyong's dominant forces and the mentor of Yawun Sang, who had recently been killed by Sial Unwai. His expression suggested sheer disbelief, and in that he looked just like Inspector Xiang. Giving out 3 silver taels, that could be overlooked. Everyone knew the mines had been stolen years ago, and now they had been reclaimed. And in the process, the Long Sword Sect's martial artists who had guarded those mines had been slaughtered. He had heard everything, and that was why he wore that face. Most martial artists live and die by vengeance. Inspector Xiang was no exception. Sial Unwai probably wasn't either, but not every martial artist acted like Sial Unwai. There's a reason why lines exist. Right now, Sial Unwai was going far beyond those lines. A day to clean out the branch, a day to advance his cultivation, a day to retake the Chengnung mine, and apparently right after that, he had gone straight to the Sialhan mine and handled that too. At that point, words failed. 3 days. He had done in 3 days what would normally take someone months. Even in medicine, rapid progress brings backlash. Inspector Xiang's gaze turned to Frozen Snow Sword Scar. That man was the backlash. With arms crossed and a faint smile on his face, he exuded something Inspector Xiang immediately recognized: undisguised killing intent. Frozen Snow Sword Scar had reached the 3rd stage of the 4 realms of refined Qi, Samwa Meditation Hall, while Sial Unwai was at the 1st stage. Yang Radiance appears. By conventional logic, they weren't even close to being equals. He thought seriously. Should I intervene? No, he decided. He shook his head and forced a smile. Now was not the time. Frozen Snow Sword Scar wasn't a fool. He wouldn't risk everything here and now. He was here to deliver a warning. At that moment, Frozen Snow Sword Scar turned to look at Inspector Siang. Seeing his awkward smile, the elder let out a faint chuckle. You've served the wrong master. Ah, you mean me? You're Siang Yangho, the one and only inspector of Sialap, aren't you? Yes, that's right. For someone of your capability, it's a waste /NOVELIGHT/ serving a brat like that. Hee hee. Well, you know, things happen. Inspector Siang looked completely ordinary, maybe even a bit slow. It was a masterful performance. Just then, another group entered the branch compound. It was Sial, Unwai, and the other 4 branch members. They were pulling over 10 carts. Judging by the horses panting heavily, they hadn't taken a break along the way. Frozen Snow Sword Scar, watching them approach, murmured under his breath. Speak of the devil. That little roach? He didn't notice. He didn't see the sudden chill that flashed across Inspector Siang's face. In his mind, Inspector Siang carved the character for patience, then forced a smile again. Sial Unwai approached. You came without sending word. Yes, and yet you don't even greet your senior? A smile tugged at Sial Unwai's lips. Surprisingly, he gave a very proper martial salute. I greet my senior with utmost respect. I didn't expect you to come in person. How could I not when you killed my disciple? At that, Sial Unwai tilted his head slightly. Oh, so that's why you came? What else would I come here for? I thought perhaps you were here to return all the resources you extorted from Sialap over the years and offer a formal apology. The moment Sial Unwai said that, the miners and branch members froze in place, along with Inspector Siang, who had been standing with his head bowed. A bloodthirsty smile crept across Frozen Snow Sword Scar's lips. You little bastard, are you insane? Senior, I'm perfectly sane. Sial Unwai gestured to Inspector Siang. The meaning of the gesture was clear, bring it. Inspector Siang swallowed hard. His eyes asked, are you really going through with this? But Sial Unwai didn't so much as flinch. He had no choice. Inspector Siang let out a long breath, then hurried inside. A moment later, he returned with a small box. Sial Unwai took it with a pleasant smile and handed it to Frozen Snow Sword Scar. A gift? Heh, you really are unpredictable. One moment you're making demands, now you're offering gifts. Frozen Snow Sword Scar opened the box and his expression hardened instantly. Inside was a severed head, crawling with maggots. Yawun Sang's head. It's not much. The head of a worm who destabilized Sialap and funneled our resources to Juryung Sword Sect in Yangnyeong. He was a piece of trash to me, but to you, he was a disciple, wasn't he? Do you have a death wish? Not at all. I really want to live a long time. And just so you know, unfortunately, that head is all that remains of him. The rest was hacked into pieces and fed to wild dogs. If you want, you can track down those dogs and piece him back together. Murderous intent exploded from Frozen Snow Sword Scar's body. His hand shot out and grabbed Sial Unwai by the collar. But surprisingly, Sial Unwai didn't move. In fact, the branch members who had been hauling Cold Ridge Jade Crystal had drawn their swords and were rushing in. Stop. Don't come any closer. At Sial Unwai's command, they halted instantly. You think I won't lay a hand on you just because you've got the everlasting snow palace behind you? To that, Sial Unwai let out a soft chuckle. Senior, not long ago I killed the beggars here in Sialap. I don't know why everyone keeps saying the same thing. You and I are in different factions, and this isn't a problem between me and the everlasting snow palace. It's between me and Yangnyeong. Also, Sial Unwai struck down the arm that was gripping his collar. Let go, you can't even tear it off. Do you know what separates you and me? What is it? You're bound. What? As for me, if the Martial Alliance comes after me, I'll take the Alliance leader's head. If the nation comes for me, I'll take the Emperor's. My background is meaningless. This is personal. You're insane. I've heard that one plenty of times, but I'm not talking about madness. I'm saying the problem here isn't about affiliations or factions. It's about the individual, do you understand? So, I don't act recklessly. If I do something worth killing for, I kill the one responsible. But those who benefited from that person, I give them one warning. Heh, fine. Keep talking. You've been exploiting Sialap through Yawun Sang. Return everything you've taken, and cease all involvement in the Chungnung mine. It's located on Sialap's land. If anyone besides those I've authorized shows up there again, I'll kill every last one of them, including the ones who sent them. And that's enough. I don't need to hear any more. Frozen Snow Sword Scar stepped forward, eyes locked on Xiao Lunwai. This is your first and final warning. Listen carefully. Chungnung mine belongs to Yangyong, so does Xiaohin mine. We of the Juriang sword sect will continue to manage both of them. As for the so-called exploitation you mentioned, that was Yawun Sang acting on his own. We knew nothing about it. We'll let you keep the ore over there. But if you interfere with Yangyong or the Juriang sword sect again, blood will rain down on Xialap, starting with you. Understood, surprisingly. Once again, Xiao Unwai responded with a gentle smile. Yes, understood. You really are impossible to read. Frozen Snow Sword Scar reached out and tapped Xiao Unwai on the head with his fingers. From now on, try to understand the difference between when to crawl and when not to. Got that? That same gesture, those same words. He had used them not long ago on the men he'd killed. But this time, Xiao Unwai didn't smile. Frozen Snow Sword Scar meant every word. To him, Xiao Unwai was just a bastard son. Sure, the everlasting snow palace stood behind him, but hadn't they been watching all this time? Even with all the provocation, the palace had stayed quiet. Sovereign Xiao Yongchen hadn't lifted a finger, nor had his brothers. The mines belonged to Yangyong, and the ruling family of Yangyong was the Juriang sword sect. That was already decided. It might as well have been fate. And yet here stood Xiao Unwai, an illegitimate child with no real backing, strutting around with nothing but arrogance. It was disgraceful to behold. You know as well as I do, your future is not your own. Sure, Yawun Sang was just a pawn and now he's gone, but that's fine. If you become the new pawn, your life will be even more comfortable, so bow your head and learn your place. Playtime's over, got it. And soon, we'll send someone to deliver the new operational policy Xialap will follow. Be prepared. Xiao Unwai still didn't answer. Whether it was fear or confusion, no one could say NAV L Cyrillic letter 456G Cyrillic letter 4BBT, official version for sure. All that mattered to Frozen Snow Sword Scar was that Xiao Unwai had finally shut his mouth. With a silent pat on Xiao Unwai's shoulder, Frozen Snow Sword Scar walked past him. He was returning to Yangyong. In the place he left behind, a heavy silence settled. Within that silence, Xiao Unwai's lips began to twitch. Ha! A crazed laugh burst forth. It was strange. Xiao Unwai was genuinely laughing as if he found something utterly hilarious, clutching his stomach from laughter, while everyone else watching him was the one getting frightened instead. Among them was someone who looked genuinely concerned. Inspector Xiang. He quietly approached Xiao Unwai. He had words prepared in his mind. That things in this world don't always go your way, that sometimes hardships like this come and you have to retreat, that under the circumstances this was a decent outcome. That Frozen Snow Sword Scar showing up to issue a personal warning meant he intended to bury everything that had happened up to this point. So best to think of it positively. But none of that mattered. Xiao Unwai had already made up his mind. The laughter cut off just like that. Inspector Xiang. Why yes, sir. Isn't it funny? What is, sir? Being alive. I never knew it could be this entertaining. Are you all right? Of course I am. Xiao Unwai patted Inspector Xiang on the shoulder instead, then turned away. Where are you going? Without even glancing back, Xiao Unwai gave a curt reply. There's something I left behind. Inspector Xiang didn't ask any further, because Xiao Unwai's face as he walked away was far too cold. He hadn't said anything, yet Xiang flinched. He had never seen an expression like that, not from Xiao Unwai, not from anyone. Li Jicheng was walking. Xialap was small, so small he didn't even want to stay there. He looked around. A blizzard was raging. This is why no one lived in the snow mountains. This fickle weather was enough to drive anyone insane. If someone claimed to enjoy this, they weren't just crazy, they were the definition of crazy. Clicking his tongue, Li Jicheng walked with his hands clasped behind his back. A blizzard like this couldn't threaten someone at the level of Samwa Meditation Hall, and yet something felt off. Why is it so quiet? Li Jicheng stopped walking and looked straight ahead. Through the whirling snowstorm, he could see someone, about 6 chiak tall, not exactly small but not bulky either. A well-balanced build, a man. The clothes he wore were clearly made from white tiger pelt, white tiger heavenly garment, worn only by the bloodline of the everlasting snow palace. It was absurd. He had clearly departed first. So how the hell was that bastard standing there? Senior, you're a bit late. Was there a shortcut? Yes, you even know of such routes, huh? I've lived in Xialap for quite some time. You think I wouldn't know at least one shortcut? He laughed. So then, why are you standing there? I already said all I had to say earlier. Surely you're not here to beg for forgiveness now, are you? Forgiveness. Why do you want me to beg? If you did, I'd accept it. Like I said earlier, even though you're a bastard son, you're clearly more useful than Yawun Sang. You've got no real backing, that's true, but you're still of the everlasting Snow Palace bloodline, so taking you under me wouldn't be such a bad move for the Juryung Sword sect, or for me. A smile curled at the corner of Sial Unwise lips. I have no intention of apologizing, never have. Then why are you here? There's something you left behind. Me, what? Yes, that thing on your shoulder, I'm going to have to take it. There's only one thing on a person's shoulder, the neck. Ha, you really have lost your damn mind. Do I look it? A brat stuck at Yang Radiance appears dares to threaten someone's neck. Li Jicheng couldn't finish the sentence. His eyes widened. The straight line of the blizzard vanished in an instant. And in that same instant, Sial Unwai had closed the distance. From his eyes, a red glow poured forth. And then, those eyes filled with murderous intent enough to make one's skin crawl. It was horrifying, the phenomenon unfolding right before his eyes. This was something he'd heard of. A technique said to be taught only to the leader, vice leader, and heir of the Central Blood Sect. The sect's ultimate martial art. Blood Domain Encirclement. A divine-level martial art where condensed blood energy creates blood eyes that dominate the surrounding aura. Sial Unwai's crimson-stained palm, CRAACK, smashed into Li Jicheng's solar plexus with brutal force. Staggering backward, Li Jicheng coughed up blood. His eyes were trembling wildly. He knew this martial art, too. Blood flame palm flesh? You're one of those demonic bastards. Again, he couldn't finish. A shadow fell across Li Jicheng's face. Wham! Sial Unwai's heel struck the side of Li Jicheng's head like a whip. He was sent flying, crashing through 2 trees before being buried in a heap of snow. Sial Unwai landed on the ground, blood eyes blazing. The Central Blood Sect would go on to become the greatest sect in all of Zhongyuan, but even at this very moment, it was already near the top. The word greatest is a fair and absolute measure. There are dozens of organizations in the martial world. The Martial Alliance, the Heavenly Will Alliance, the Sichuan Alliance. Even groups like the 5 Great Sword Clans and the External 4 Families. Whether it's a massive alliance of dozens or hundreds of sects like the Martial Alliance, or a single organization, greatest is a word that only applies when something is truly the greatest. At this moment, the most powerful organization is the Martial Alliance, and the only one capable of standing against it alone is the Central Blood Sect. By anyone's standards, it's close to the top. Of course, the Central Blood Sect also had sub-branches, 5 in total. In the future, they would bring every group under their feet. They would establish the Blood Sect's rule over the world, naturally so. So how exactly did they accomplish that? Let me make it clear. My contribution was significant. So significant, in fact, that the Blood Sect leader created a position just for me. The one and only seat of Blood Heaven's middle pillar. I had access to the sect leader's martial arts and scriptures and learned every core essence of the sect during that time. I drew up Falstru Vital Chi. It was no bigger than a grain of dust, but it immediately began to break apart and take on a blood-colored hue. This is Blood Chi. I focused. The ultimate body technique that can only be executed with Blood Chi, Blood Demon Vaulting Heaven technique. One of the reasons the Blood Sect leader was hailed as the strongest under heaven. It is composed of 5 stages, and throughout the history of the Central Blood Sect, only the current sect leader had ever reached the final 5th stage. Thum, the tremor that started in my lower dantian echoed throughout my entire body. The blood chi surged upward, spreading across every inch of my flesh. First gate blood gate breathing. The constraints that bound my physical body melted away, still not enough. Soon, the blood chi enveloping my body began to leak outside. Blood-colored mist rose from my skin. Second gate blood body transformation. I swung my arm. CRAACK? Li Jicheng, who had rushed in and struck with his sword, was thrown back as it bounced away. That trembling in his eyes, that was unmistakably fear. I stomped the ground. My body shot forward. At the same time, I extended my left arm and grabbed Li Jicheng by the throat. I'll say it again. Samwa Meditation Hall may be a high level within the refined Chi realm, but it's not a level reserved for the strongest of the strong. Not enough to crawl before me. I tightened my grip, staring into Li Jicheng's eyes, now flooded with terror. He panicked. Li Jicheng felt Sial Unwai's grip tightening around his throat. He immediately struck at his wrist and leapt back to gain distance. A fear he couldn't even describe surged up inside. In that instant, he pulled up his innate vital chi. Had he not done so, his neck would have been crushed. It was unbelievable. Li Jicheng wasn't inexperienced, not in the slightest. If anything, his experience was extensive, yet even he had never seen such a thing before, only heard of it in legend. The Central Blood Sect. Even just hearing that name struck fear into people. And this was one of the martial arts used only by the top 3 within that demonic sect. How the hell was that bastard using it? This doesn't make any sense. He drew the sword at his waist. He had to kill him. No, if not kill, then at least knock him out and bring him back. Interrogate him. But could he kill him? Could he even knock him out? Could he interrogate him? Who would he even bring him to? To whom exactly? This was no longer about man versus man. It was organization versus organization. And in his mind, so used to calculating political capital and power behind the scenes, Li Jicheng still hadn't realized. He fundamentally misunderstood what separated him from Xiao Anwei. Gritting his teeth, he struck with his sword. His hand trembled, but the direction was accurate. Xiao Anwei tilted his body, letting the blade miss and strike the ground. The tip of your sword is shaking. Li Jicheng retrieved it and swung again, teeth clenched. Xiao Anwei didn't dodge. He faced it directly, body upright. Just as the tip of the sword was about to pierce between Xiao Anwei's brows, he turned his head slightly. The blade skimmed past his face, and then, crack, the back of Xiao Anwei's hand smashed into Li Jicheng's solar plexus. Skidding backward, Li Jicheng coughed up blood and lifted his head. Impossible. He couldn't understand what was happening. It felt like every piece of martial logic he had built over decades was crumbling. You! What the hell are you? Li Jicheng's voice trembled. The shaking in his sword arm had spread to his voice and now to his neck. Even his face had gone pale. This, he had no idea how to explain it. What the hell was that thing in front of him? That idiot Xiao Anwei? That bastard's son? No, what stood before him now was like a transcendent being, a sage descended from the heavens, something untouchable. Xiao Anwei walked forward silently. His steps barely touched the ground, as if he were walking on clouds. The pulse of life forged from blood chi filled the air. Aren't you curious? At Xiao Anwei's calm, echoing voice, Li Jicheng swallowed hard. What happens when the one closest to being strongest under heaven wakes up one morning as a 17-year-old? The raging blizzard isolated the two of them from the outside world. With narrowed eyes, Li Jicheng looked at Xiao Anwei. Xiao Anwei spoke slowly. Senior, you couldn't even begin to imagine it, to have mastered all the martial arts in the world, to hold the principles of heaven and earth in the palm of your hand. You've only ever watched that height from afar. Xiao Anwei let out a bitter smile. Even if the body has weakened and the realm has fallen to the depths of the earth, one's enlightenment and insight can never disappear. The eyes of a man who once placed the world beneath his feet, even if they fall to the ground, they still reflect the heavens. The blood chi floating around Xiao Anwei shimmered across the air like a dance, painting the space around him. Just like this moment, all the blood chi around him surged inward and was absorbed into his body. I know exactly what I'm capable of, and I know how far I can reach. But you, senior, you don't. You don't know where your limits lie, and you don't know what you're truly capable of. As the air around them grew colder, so too did Xiao Anwei's gaze darken. That's why even in this very moment you're standing there as if all you see is a bastard child. Please. Spare me. Are you referring to yourself, senior? Xiao Anwei gave a short, dry laugh. And why should I? I'll keep your secret. I beg you, let me serve you. Yes, I'll become your sword, your servant. Please, it's too late, senior. Xiao Anwei's left hand shot forward like lightning and seized Li Jicheng by the hair. Mercy is an emotion that reveals the limits of rationality. That's why the wise are wary of it and fools are seduced by it. Senior, do I look like a fool to you? You told me yourself, didn't you, to know when to crawl forward and when not to? That. I'll return the favor. If you're granted another life, then may you finally learn when to crawl and when to stay down. Xiao Anwei extended his right hand and drove it forward. Squelch! His hand pierced straight through Li Jicheng's throat. And without pause, he clenched his fingers. He seized Li Jicheng's windpipe and tore it out. Crunch, R.I.P. Chapter 3. Xiao Anwei silently looked down at N.O.V.Y.L. Cyrillic letter 456G Cyrillic letter 4BBT, official version, the corpse of Li Jicheng. Then blood burst from his mouth. His blood vessels raged like they were about to explode, spasming uncontrollably, but he didn't collapse. He quickly activated the grand void immortal blood heart technique. The surging, boiling madness in his bloodstream slowly began to calm. He had suffered considerable internal damage, but it was fine. He had pushed himself too far, but even that was fine. This wretched body needed to suffer more. The physical body he had in his previous life and this one, they were far too different. He would temper it, again and again. As he calmed his body in silence, his thoughts drifted. His current cultivation was at Yang Radiance appears. So then, what kind of opponent could he realistically handle at this level? He could deal with someone at Samwa Meditation Hall fairly comfortably, but this last fight had been borderline. He hadn't used the weapons in his possession. He had relied solely on martial arts. If he approached it this way again and faced a master from 5 origins and 5 essences, his only option would be mutual destruction. He needed to circulate his energy properly, to create maximum efficiency with minimal internal force. If he predicted the opponent's martial arts and movements, it would end easily. Of course, that only applied to fighters within the refined Qi realm. As for martial artists in the heaven and earth realm, they were absolutely beyond him right now. No matter how well he predicted, no matter how lucky he got, it was impossible. There was one reason. Until refined Qi realm, one manipulates ordinary Qi. From heaven and earth realm onward, they wield natural Qi. And that natural Qi is the problem. No matter how enlightened he might be, to even attempt to face someone in the first stage of heaven and earth realm of harmony, he would at least need to reach Samwa Meditation Hall, where the middle and lower Danshan are unified. Only at that level could he even hope to fight someone in the realm of harmony. And once again he felt it, he had returned. But now he was the weak one. Cough, cough, blood poured from his lips without pause. There was no regret in killing Li Jicheng. Even if it happened again, he would kill Li Jicheng all over again. Soon, his entire body grew cold. It had been a while since he felt a real chill. Who? He spoke in a quiet voice. Inspector Xiang. The sudden call was met with an equally sudden appearance. Xiang Yangho appeared beside him. He said nothing, his face frozen in shock, but he placed a hand on Xiao Unwise's back and began transferring energy. Relief washed over him instantly. Of course it did. Inspector Xiang was a martial artist of the heaven and earth realm. What exactly did I just witness? You saw what you saw. When did you come into contact with the Central Blood Sect? Did you only hear half the story? Doesn't seem like it. Then why ask? Young master, this really isn't right. Not as wrong as exposing your own identity as a member of the White Snow Spirit Guard, wouldn't you say? White Snow Spirit Guard. An elite secret force that protects the bloodline and secrets of the everlasting Snow Palace. Xiao Unwise looked directly at him and spoke. Pure as 1,000 years of snow. The response came without hesitation. Shadowed like the soul that endures. The motto of the White Snow Spirit Guard. This organization was directly under the command of the Palace Lord, made up of one leader and numerous agents. Numerous because not even the members knew each other's identities. Only the commander and the Palace Lord knew who was who. Within the everlasting Snow Palace, they underwent more than 20 years of strict selection and training, and it was a rule that they never reveal their identities to each other. Even in death, they were bound by oath to protect their secret. But there was one thing that was absolutely certain. Every member of the White Snow Spirit Guard was at least heaven and earth realm. Since when did you know? From the beginning. How? Xiao Unwise turned his head to look at him. Inspector Xiang? Yes, young master. I don't care if you're White Snow Spirit Guard or whatever. To me, you're just Inspector Xiang. The one who stood by me since I was a child. Young master. You heard everything I said earlier. If you're asking me again, it's either because it's too hard to believe or you want to hear it directly from my mouth. Which is it? Both, he answered quietly. I went back in time. Is that true? How else could I possibly explain this situation? Just like I told you that night in the residence, I didn't exaggerate what was true and I didn't make up what wasn't. I only spoke exactly as things are. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. Young master, I'm getting tired of repeating myself. So is that the only thing you're curious about? ... in your previous life. What happened to the everlasting Snow Palace? He answered plainly. It was annihilated. By whom? By me. Inspector Xiang's jaw dropped. Thanks to the energy that Inspector Xiang had injected into him, Xiao Unwise stood up with a body that now felt significantly better. He staggered a little, but this much was manageable, though apparently not in Inspector Xiang's eyes. You should rest a little longer. Xiao Unwise shook his head. There's still something I need to do. Unbelievable, muttered Inspector Xiang, supporting him for now, then asking. What are you planning to do? What else? I need to erase the traces. The blizzard is fierce. The blood chi you released will be wiped out naturally. And the body? Inspector Siong. Yes, young master. Li Jicheng came to Sialep, bowed his head in apology, confessed everything I didn't know about Yangyong's corruption, and disappeared on his way back to Yangyong. Isn't it strange? A martial artist at Samwa Meditation Hall, one of the so-called strongest of the strong, suddenly vanishes. I think I get what you're thinking, but please, just end it here. If you push this further, it gets dangerous. End it, meaning I should let all the friction go and move in a more constructive direction. Yes, as I suspected, Inspector Siong is still the idealist. Why are you saying that? If I back off now, do you think the other side will back off too? Grudges in the martial world aren't as simple as you think. Think about why a phrase like uproot the source exists. Young master, this fight has already started, and I wasn't the one who started it. They made the first move, all I did was respond. But still, 6 years. That's not a short amount of time, and during those 6 years, in my name and in the name of the everlasting Snow Palace, they plundered and schemed. There's only one kind of forgiveness for bastards like that. What kind? Death. To me, clearing grudges means exactly that. That is my mercy. That is the price they'll pay. He took a breath, speaking quietly. When I passed the Beggars' Union branch in Sialap, I took a look at its condition. It looked bad. Sialap owns an entire mine, yet the people there looked like starving beggars. Whose fault is that? Inspector Siong didn't answer right away, so Sial Unwai made it easier for him. It's my fault. I ran away, I hid, and the people under me paid the price. So you're going to see this through to the end? That's how I've always lived. And if you die, then I'll have died living how I wanted to. That means I died as a martial artist, and that would be an honorable death. You really are different. What is? Just everything. Inspector Siong, as if he had come to a decision, stepped back from Sial Unwai. Will you be able to walk alone? Sial Unwai nodded. Then go on ahead. I'll stay behind and clean up the scene. Sial Unwai smiled faintly. Trying to help. Honestly, it's not the first time I've cleaned up after you. I can handle this much. I don't mind that choice of words, cleaning up after me. Well, good luck. Without hesitation, Sial Unwai walked away. He could clearly imagine the look on Inspector Siong's face, staring at him in disbelief. But that was fine. Right now he had to return to Sialap. There was still one thing left to deal with there. Returning to Sialap, Sial Unwai stopped in front of a rather large manor. He looked up. The sign above the pavilion read, Iron Mountain Sword Sect. This was the most powerful sect in Sialap. The sect leader, Yang So, was a martial artist at Samwa Meditation Hall and possessed respectable talent. He was also quite young, barely 30. Sial Unwai addressed the 2 guards at the gate. Open it! There was no response. As if unsure what to do, the 2 warriors stared at him, visibly flustered. Sial Unwai repeated himself. I said open it. The 2 guards swallowed hard and moved to open the gate, but surprisingly it opened from the inside. Standing there was a man with short hair and sharp, clear features. Strapped to his waist was a sword about 6 chiak long. Etched on the right side of the blade were the characters, Iron Mountain. It was the Iron Mountain sword, the best weapon of the Iron Mountain sword sect, and considered a sacred treasure. Of course, calling something a sacred treasure, when it was held by a mere Samwa Meditation Hall martial artist, was a bit ridiculous. But to them, they were serious. And Sial Unwai didn't mock people like that. Value is a relative thing. If you mock what belongs to others, they too can mock what is yours. There was no reason to scoff in a situation where they weren't enemies. More than anything, Yang So. He had definitely heard that name before. Roughly 20 years from now, Yang So would come to command an entire martial force of the everlasting Snow Palace. At that time, his cultivation level would reach the 4th stage of the 4 realms of heaven and earth, the realm of heaven and man. Ha, no wonder I felt good energy from this morning. I've finally had the honor of meeting a noble guest. Yang So clasped his hands in greeting. A pleasure to meet you. I'm Yang So of the Iron Mountain Sword Sect. Sial Unwai of Sialap. Ha, well now it's already been over 5 years since we settled in Sialap, and only now do we finally get to meet. I Yang So feel quite delighted. There was a slight edge to his words, but it wasn't a problem. This much could be laughed off. Shall we head inside? I just received a fine new tea, Yang Snow Tea, uses the same Yang as my name. Ha. With a nod, Sial Unwai stepped inside. Together, Sial Unwai and Yang So headed toward a detached residence where they sat down facing each other. It was quite strange. That was Yang So's thought, 5 years. When the Iron Mountain Sword Sect had first settled in Sialap, Yang So had tried to meet the branch lord, Sial Unwai, before anyone else, but had been rejected. If you were establishing a base in a region, it was only proper to pay respects to the one in charge. Especially since, even as an illegitimate son, Sial Unwai still carried the bloodline of the everlasting Snow Palace. And yet he had been turned down, not once but 3 times. Instead of Sial Unwai, it had been Yawun Sang, the deputy branch lord at the time, who visited Yang So. And Yang So had said this: "If you're not here by order of the branch lord, then get lost." Because Yang So had known full well that Yawun Sang was nothing but a cockroach strutting around under borrowed authority. To be blunt, Yang So didn't hold any particular grudge against Sial Unwai, but he didn't have any goodwill either. After all, it was Sial Unwai's negligence that had allowed the likes of Yawun Sang to thrive. And now, after 5 long years, Sial Unwai had come in person. "Honestly, I never expected you to visit me directly. Is it strange?" "Of course it is. When I kept requesting to meet you, you wouldn't even spare a breath through your nose." Sial Unwai let out a faint chuckle. "If you're asking that without knowing, then there's no reason for me to be here. But if you're asking while knowing, then I'll let it slide just once. There won't be a second time." A strange smile curled at Yang So's lips. "You're a curious one indeed. Was the scarecrow who lived all these years the real you, or is this version of you the real one? They're both me. Must we really draw a line between the two? I suppose not. Humans are dual-natured beings. No matter what kind of personality one has, it can be understood, but I still can't tell. Why have you come to see me?" To be honest, Sial Unwai had no intention of involving this man in his plans. "What's your ultimate goal?" "Ultimate goal, you say? I'm curious, why don't you tell me?" Yang So paused, as if thinking, and then quietly said, "Several things came to mind, but in the end they all lead to a single answer." "And what is it?" "Power. Power, branch lord. I am a martial artist, and as a martial artist I am endlessly curious just how far someone like me can climb." "The sky. Yes, my goal is the sky." Sial Unwai finally couldn't help but burst out laughing. And at that very moment Yang So's expression hardened. "Why are you laughing?" Yang So's voice had gone cold. Understandably so, he had taken Sial Unwai's laughter as mockery. Sial Unwai's smile vanished. "Do you feel insulted? Don't you? I'd rather you not misunderstand. Then why did you laugh? I need to hear the reason." Staring at Yang So with a strange expression, Sial Unwai let out another soft laugh. Truly, he hadn't expected to hear something like that here. "The sky, huh? Are you confident?" "I am. A bit of a shame." "What do you mean, because my goal is the same?" "You said your aim was the sky. Mine is also the sky, and the sky should only have one master. Because there can't be 2 skies. That's why I laughed. No matter how it ends, you'll always be beneath the sky I occupy." Only then did Yang So laugh as well. "Who knows, I might end up standing above you." "I sincerely hope you do." That was enough. This was plenty. Sial Unwai had wondered what kind of man Yang So was, and this conversation had resolved every doubt. "I intend to resume mining operations at the Chungnung mine. I heard Yanyong's people were mining there until now. Did you take it from them?" "I didn't take it. It always belonged to Sialep. But unfortunately, no one in Sialep has the strength your Iron Mountain Sword sect possesses. So let me ask, would you be willing to join me in a job?" Yang So's expression grew serious as well. "Listening to you, something comes to mind." "Let's hear it. Is it escort duty? You're quick." "I've survived on my instincts, but if it's escort duty..." "Are you talking about protecting not only the Chungnung mine, but also the Chungwon Nov8? Read more on our source, trading company." Sial Unwai nodded. Yang So fell silent, lost in thought. He was weighing the pros and cons in his head, and he quickly realized that this would be a net loss. Conflict with Yanyong was inevitable, and the damages would be significant. But there was still something he hadn't heard, what Sial Unwai was offering in return. And right then, Sial Unwai spoke. "I'll give you 20%. From net profit. Or total revenue, 20% of the net profit." It wasn't nearly enough for something worth his life. That was what Yang So thought as he began to prepare his refusal. But then, "You said your goal was the sky, didn't you?" "Yes, I did." "Then how exactly do you plan on reaching that sky?" "You're only capable of using refined chi-level techniques at best. Even if you were to go hunting in secret realms with that level of cultivation and those kinds of martial arts, you'd need divine luck to succeed. And even then, the chances aren't good. 10% at most. Which means you're left with 2 options. 2. 1. Join the everlasting Snow Palace. If they recognize your talent, you'll be given high-level martial arts. And if you're placed in charge of a strike unit, even if it's lower tier, you might get access to heaven and earth-grade techniques. If your talents prove extraordinary, you might even be selected for the White Spirit Guard. I've considered that, but didn't you say there were two options? I did, Sial Unwai continued in a quiet voice. The other is take it from me. ... From you, Branch Lord? Have you heard of the heaven-reversing sword art? The moment Yang So heard that name, his already large eyes widened to the point of almost bursting out of their sockets. How could I not know? That's the signature martial art of Han Chenu, the heaven-reversing sword emperor, one of the 10 masters of the world from 800 years ago. The same man who split Mount Wuding in half by himself. You're surprisingly well-read. Then what martial art is required to perform the heaven-reversing sword art? Of course I know, the heaven-following sword art. One must fully master it first before one can even attempt the heaven-reversing sword art. But why are you bringing that up? Sial Unwai quietly recited a chant. Respond to heaven, align with the way, and grasp the mysterious principle. Let the profound transformation reach infinitely until it connects with the mechanism of heaven. Crash. Yang So jumped so violently that his chair toppled backward. Silence filled the detached residence. As Yang So sat there, eyes trembling like mad, Sial Unwai met his gaze and asked, no matter how much of a prerequisite it is, the heaven-following sword art is still a heaven and earth-grade technique. Do you want to hear the rest of the chant? Why, yes, I do. Then, are you accepting my offer? If I accept, will you really give me the technique? Of course. Not just the heaven-following sword art, but the heaven-reversing sword art as well, Sial Unwai nodded. And if it's fake, I'll stake my life on it. Gulp, Yang So swallowed hard, he truly couldn't understand. For a technique that powerful, why wouldn't you use it yourself? It's of no use to me. But for you, it will be useful, and Yang So, yes, I don't know how far you'll be able to go with this martial art. But remember one thing. I'm listening. Don't stab me in the back, and don't stab the everlasting snow palace in the back either. If you don't, then not only the heaven-following sword art, but the heaven-reversing sword art as well will be yours. You don't have to worry about that. I, Yang So, may have only lived 30 years, but in all that time, I've never once lived like a petty coward. Good. Sial Unwai rose from his seat and recited the remaining lines of the chant. The way follows nature and inherits the path of heaven. One sword becomes truth and reaches the heart of heaven. And then, to the trembling Yang So, whose arms were now shaking as well, Sial Unwai spoke as if tossing the words at him. Come to the branch office before the caravan departs tomorrow. I'll teach you the first stance then. Thank you for this grace, I won't forget it. Sial Unwai was curious. In his past life, Yang So had wielded a heaven and earth-grade martial art and reached the level of a heaven and earth-class martial artist. So then, what if he gave him a martial god-grade technique? Could he possibly ascend to the 5 realms of the martial god? In Sial Unwai's eyes, Yang So clearly had enough talent to reach at least the upper edge of the heaven and earth realms. He needed more hands. But for now, he would wait and watch. And with that, Sial Unwai returned to the branch. Without a word to anyone, he walked straight into his quarters. The moment he shut the door, all strength left his body. He passed out completely. But before his collapsing body could hit the floor, someone rushed in with lightning speed and caught him. It was Inspector Siang. Lifting Sial Unwai with ease, Inspector Siang gently laid him down on the bedding. Staring at the peacefully sleeping Sial Unwai, his expression was full of concern. Sial Unwai couldn't get up easily. Thanks to the inner energy that Inspector Siang had infused into him, he'd been able to move around for a brief while. But once that wore off, he could do little more than lie in bed. That lasted for 4 full days. Even so, Sial Unwai did what needed to be done from bed. First, all members of the branch had successfully memorized the basic stances of the heaven-slaying wolf star technique. Yang So of the Iron Mountain Sword Sect received the full heaven-following sword art from Sial Unwai, and took charge of the escort mission for the Chengnung mine. Ore extraction went smoothly, and no interference came from Yangnyeong. The Chenggwon Trading Company's caravan also departed without trouble. With the start of sales of uncut Hanrung jade, money began to circulate through Sialap again, and the people slowly began to smile. All of this happened in just 4 days. Sial Unwai rose from his bed. He had managed to get up after just 4 days only because he had continuously consumed cultivation resources and spiritual pills and fully refined them. Without those, he would have had to stay bedridden for over 10 days. That was the price of using the blood demon vaulting heaven technique with such a fragile, low-grade body. Even with his blood vessels being vastly denser than those of ordinary people, Sial Unwai had barely survived. Had it been anyone else, they'd be dead already. Sial Unwai stood and washed himself, then changed into fresh clothes. Finally, he draped the white tiger heavenly robe over his shoulders and stared into the mirror. He looked a little haggard, but still human. "Will you be going alone?" Inspector Siang's voice. Sial Unwai simply looked at him in silence. Why are you looking at me like that? I was just looking. Let me just say this just in case. I swear I had nothing to do with the sovereign summoning you. A faint smile. But you did report it. Didn't you? I mean, I did. But Sial Unwai quietly patted Inspector Siang on the shoulder. Don't worry about it. I'll be away for a few days, so I want you to keep Sialep secure while I'm gone. Can you do that? When you say secure, it sounds a lot like you're telling me to use force. Still, these people have become mine. I should at least make sure they don't die. Someone like you, Inspector Siang, is more than enough to protect Sialap. Or am I wrong? You're not wrong, but if it's discovered that I'm part of the White Snow Spirit Guard the moment it reaches the captain's ears, he might actually beat me to death. If you're beaten to death by the captain, then I promise on everything I have that I'll make sure the captain dies in far more pain. And if he has any family, I'll find them and kill them all. I'm truly grateful for the sentiment. I'll do my best. Sial Unwai stared at him for a long moment and said, If you're that worried, just wear a mask. They're all over the place. Leaving behind the utterly dumbfounded face of Inspector Siang, Sial Unwai set off for the main palace. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it awe-inspiring. The palace's pure white walls soared skyward, and at their peak were rooftops crafted from ice that never melted. Icicles hung from the eaves like dragon fangs, and whenever the wind blew, a subtle spiritual energy would flow from them, clearly marking this as more than just a building. On the central hall was inscribed the phrase, Everlasting Snow Palace. The characters seemed to breathe. This was it, the true main palace of the Everlasting Snow Palace, shaped by 2,000 years of history. The guards at the gate glanced at Sial Unwai's face without expression, then silently opened the door. With natural, familiar steps, Sial Unwai entered and walked along the vast ice walls, saying nothing. A wave of emotion struck him. This was the place he had once destroyed with his own hands, where he had killed everyone inside. And yet Sial Unwai felt no regret. He had had more than enough reason to destroy it. He'd had the power to do it. It was right to destroy it. And here he had died. He looked around. It was quiet, peaceful. At this point in time, there were no major issues. The war that would break out 10 years from now. The inevitable collision between the Central Blood Sect and the Sichuan Alliance. As far as Sial Unwai knew, there were at least 7 years left. Until then, the martial world would experience a rare and fragile peace. After spending a moment in silence near the ice wall, Sial Unwai quietly descended the stairs. He arrived at the ice-cold medicine hall, the pavilion where medicinal resources were managed. There were 2 reasons he came. First, since it had been a while, he planned to replenish some cultivation materials. Second, his blood vessels were still throbbing from the use of blood qi, and he intended to get spiritual pills to treat it. The moment he stepped inside, a subtle medicinal scent tickled his nose. Without hesitation, Sial Unwai approached one of the pharmacists who was organizing ingredients. The pharmacist blinked, startled. His expression clearly said, "Why are you here?" He didn't care. "Do you have 100-year Ice Heart Pill and 50-year Snow Marrow Elixir?" The voice was calm, but it caused every pharmacist nearby to look up from their work. The 100-year Ice Heart Pill was a high-grade cultivation resource. The 50-year Snow Marrow Elixir was a rare medicine used to heal damaged meridians. Naturally, neither was easy to obtain. But this was the main palace of the Everlasting Snow Palace. Of course they had them. What surprised them wasn't the items, but the person asking for them, Sial Unwai, and he wasn't done. "I also need Ice Snow Lotus and Cold Ice 100-Mile Grass, preferably in top grade." The eyes of pharmacist Jin Hansu narrowed ever so slightly. Well, isn't this the branch lord of Sialap?" A late greeting, polite in tone but filled with barbs. His gaze had changed. 100-year Ice Heart Pill, 50-year Snow Marrow Elixir. Ice Snow Lotus and Cold Ice 100-Mile Grass. So you're mixing cultivation resources with recovery medicine. That kind of combination is used to circulate blood, repair meridians, heal internal injuries, and refine constitution. May I ask why you need such rare items? Do I have to explain that too? Perhaps you're unaware, but those 4 items are typically reserved for key figures of the palace. That is, members of the direct bloodline. It's extremely difficult to hand them out. Jin Hansu put particular weight on the word direct. It went beyond veiled sarcasm. It was practically open disdain. Besides, the ice snow lotus is a sensitive item. Its medicinal properties change if more than a day passes after harvesting. I wonder if a place like Sialep even has proper facilities for preservation. He scratched his head and let out a sigh. I don't know where you heard those names, but even if we ignore the fact that I can't give them to you, just eating them doesn't mean you'll benefit from them. They only show significant effects when you've suffered a major wound to blood chi or internal force. No, more importantly, even members of the direct bloodline need the right body constitution, NOV Cyrillic letter 456 G Cyrillic letter 4BBT, official version, to absorb their properties. Direct bloodline, huh? Then tell me, who do I look like to you? I remember, the wives instructed long ago, if he ever comes into the apothecary, give him nothing. Isn't that right? At that, Jin Hansu flinched. Sial Unwai was a bastard son. Technically not even worth monitoring, but some had decided it was better to cut him off early. More than one. Sial Unwai had 3 older brothers and 1 older sister. Out of the 4, only one had actively worked against him. The others didn't go out of their way to suppress or interfere with him. Some had been kind, others ignored him. But the real problem wasn't the siblings themselves, it was the people behind them. To Sial Unwai, they were stepmothers. To his brothers and sister, they were mothers. And behind them stood their respective clans. Those clans had acted in unison. That's what it means to be a bastard. That was why in his past life, Sial Unwai hadn't even come near the apothecary, let alone entered it. He'd gone a few times and had been humiliated to his face, more than once. Avoiding the place was only natural. He'd left for Sialep 6 years ago, but it had been nearly 8, maybe even 9 years, since he'd last stepped foot in the apothecary. Calmly, Unwai continued speaking. All that talk about vessels or whatever, everything you said after that was meaningless, so there's no point responding. But I will offer you one warning. Once again, it bears repeating. Sial Unwai doesn't act without reason. Everything he does has a purpose. And no matter what the situation is, he gives at least one warning. Forget the past. I am of the everlasting Snow Palace's bloodline, and I have come here with rightful authority to retrieve cultivation materials and spiritual pills. I'll repeat myself. 200-year ice heart pills, 5 drops of 50-year snow marrow elixir, 1 root of ice snow lotus, and 2 roots of cold ice 100-mile grass. Bring them. That's not possible, Jin Hansu replied. And just after that, another pharmacist nearby sighed and chimed in. Even if this is the medicine hall, you can't just demand something and have it fall into your lap. Tusk. It wasn't surprising. This is how things were here. Sial Unwai gave a sidelong glance at the pharmacist who had joined in and then turned his eyes back to Jin Hansu. What's your name? Jin Hansu. Jin Hansu, listen carefully. In fact, all of you pharmacists here, open your ears and listen. Your duty is to serve the everlasting Snow Palace. The one and only person you owe allegiance to is the sovereign. I, standing right here before you, am of the Snow Palace's bloodline. Bastard, illegitimate, whatever you want to call it. What does that even matter? You may not realize it, but I rarely speak this long, so I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. But even after that long speech, Jin Hansu's attitude didn't change. He'd been looking down on this bastard son for over a decade. And to him, this was an opportunity. Jin Hansu was aiming to become the assistant head of the apothecary, and behind him stood the Hanbing clan, the very same clan behind the third son, Sial Unhe. There was no way he didn't know that Sial Unhe and Sial Unwai were on bad terms. This level of defiance. It was expected, something to bring back to the Hanbing clan for credit. In his mind, he was doing the right thing. All that nonsense Sial Unwai had just said about loyalty to the sovereign, it was just formalities. That's how he saw it. No, go back. Sial Unwai nodded as if he understood, then he smiled gently. So the hierarchy here really is broken. And in that moment, Jin Hansu's entire body shuddered. That smile, it was too chilling. It crawled under your skin. What did it mean? He barely had time to ask before Sial Unwai grabbed him by the hair and smashed an elbow down on his face, without hesitation. Crack, his nose flattened, teeth shattered. Even his jawbone caved in. Gah, why is it so hard for people to understand plain words? Sial Unwai threw Jin Hansu's crumpled body to the floor. Then he drew the sword at his hip, flipped it into a reverse grip, and stabbed it straight down. Squelch, it went right through Jin Hansu's spine. It wasn't enough. He pulled the blade out and stabbed it through the man's neck. Then again, through the skull. Jin Hansu had already lost consciousness the moment his spine was pierced. He died the instant the sword went through his neck. Sial Unwai pulled his sword free and slowly turned his head. His eyes locked with another man's. It was the pharmacist who had chimed in earlier with his arrogant remarks. What's your name? I'm Yang Waisung. Sial Unwai nodded as if he'd heard clearly and started walking toward him. Yang Waisung began to retreat in a panic, but it was meaningless. Sial Unwai's strides were longer, steadier. Yang Waisung's legs were shaking uncontrollably, but Sial Unwai's pace never faltered. The distance closed, inevitably. And then Sial Unwai's sword pierced Yang Waisung's heart. Squelch, he pulled it out clean and swung, slice. Yang Waisung's head shot up into the air. Sial Unwai casually flicked the blood off his sword and swept a chilling gaze over the remaining pharmacists. Those who met his eyes collapsed on the spot. They had no idea his sword would be this ruthless. None of them had even imagined he'd actually kill. Is that really the bastard's son? They couldn't understand. Just then, what's with all this commotion? Huh, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the medicine hall. A middle-aged man who had just come down from the upper floor blinked in disbelief. He looked like someone who couldn't grasp what was going on. Sial Unwai spoke curtly. Are you the head of the ice-cold medicine hall? Yes. I am the hall master, Manryong. I didn't expect our reunion with the final descendant of the polar bloodline to turn out like this. After nearly 6 years. No, maybe 8. Polar bloodline. That was the term used to refer to the bloodline of the everlasting snow palace. All the descendants were collectively called the polar bloodline. The first son was the great snow Kirin. The second son, the second snow Kirin. The third son, the third snow Kirin. The fourth son, the dark snow Kirin. These titles were used for male descendants. For women, the first daughter was called Ice Snow Spirit and the second Ice Ridge Flower. There were titles beyond those, but currently there was only a first daughter. These were the unique titles used to refer to the polar bloodline of the everlasting snow palace. Dark Snow Kirin, Sial Unwai said. In those 8 years, nothing in this medicine hall has changed. Is that so? Who decided to employ those maggot-like bastards down there who don't even know who they're supposed to be loyal to? If I said it was my decision, would you be angry with me too? Sial Unwai quietly climbed the stairs and stopped in front of the hall master. If you're too slow to understand your situation, I'll kill you here and now. I am the head of the ice-cold medicine hall. Even as a descendant of the polar bloodline, killing a hall master won't be easily overlooked. Wanna bet? A bet. I'll wager everything that I'll get away with it. What will you wager? Oh, that was poorly phrased. You're a dead man anyway, so wagering anything is meaningless. Just pretend you didn't hear that. Sial Unwai's eyes gleamed with murderous intent. The hall master, facing that killing intent, made a swift judgment. He had survived off reading people for 20 years. He spoke quickly. It was a mistake. First, I apologize for the rudeness committed by my subordinates, and for the rudeness I'm committing right now. He stepped back and respectfully performed a martial salute. Sial Unwai stared down at him silently. As the hall master slowly relaxed his salute and lifted his head, his eyes widened in shock. He hadn't even realized it. Sial Unwai's hand had already reached out and grabbed him by the throat. Hall master. KHHM? Yes. It's clear the responsibility for this mess starts with you. The palace lord is already too busy with affairs of the court to discipline every dog beneath him. That responsibility falls to the man in charge, you. So tell me, what exactly have you been doing? I'm sorry. Those who disrupt the hierarchy deserve to die. The 2 lying dead over there paid their price. You must pay yours as well, am I wrong? You are not. Then I'd like to ask, how do you intend to take responsibility? When Sial Unwai loosened his grip, Manryong swallowed hard and began to speak slowly. I will make sure this never happens again. I'll personally oversee their training one by one. Can you stake your neck on that? Yes, I will. Sial Unwai's grip tightened again. Manryong couldn't help but panic. He thought the conversation was over. Then Sial Unwai's voice pierced his ear, heavy with murderous intent. Hierarchy begins from the top. Remember this. The ones you owe loyalty to are not individual descendants of the polar bloodline, certainly not to some maternal clan or affiliated sect. You owe loyalty to the rightful master of the Snow Palace. To him and him alone. I'll remember that. This is your last warning. If something like this happens again, I'll kill you without hesitation, and I'll kill everyone connected to you. Manryong couldn't understand what was happening. His cultivation was in the manifestation of the infinite stage. Yet Xiao Unwai was crushing his protective martial energy like paper. How was that even possible? Is that bastard son really? Him? Next time, choose your people carefully. Train them properly, got it? Yes. Then bring me the resources I requested. As Xiao Unwai lowered his hand, the coughing Manryong signaled the pharmacists below. They scurried off without hesitation, and before long, Xiao Unwai had obtained every single resource he needed. Chapter 4. For the first time in a long while, I meditated in my residence located at the outskirts of the main palace. The elixirs I obtained from the medicine hall weren't meant to raise my cultivation level. They were meant to restore my body to a functional state. I had forcefully drawn out my blood chi, and even used the blood demon vaulting heaven technique with it. I wouldn't deny it had been somewhat foolish. But once I finished my meditation, a rare sense of clarity and freshness came over me. As I stepped outside, I had no choice but to stop at the entrance. I wasn't quite sure what to say. That man walking toward me, it had been so long since I'd last seen him that I couldn't even remember when it was. He smiled brightly and spoke. "It's been a while, little brother." He was 5 years older than me, 22 this year. Third Snow Kirin Sialan he said, "Have you lost your damn mind? You mean me? No one in their right mind would dare spill blood in the medicine hall. You've gone insane." When the incident broke out earlier, some of the pharmacists had bolted outside. One of them must have reported it to this brother of mine. I smiled and replied, "Then I guess I'm insane." "What? Fourth brother, did you know something?" "Know what?" "When someone takes action, they ought to take responsibility for it." So, I walked forward in silence. Without hesitation, I stepped right up to Xiao Unhe. At that moment, the two martial artists standing at his sides drew their swords and blocked the space between us. I ignored N-O-V-Y-L-I-G-H-T them. When I kept walking forward, clearly unfazed, even their blades were forced to yield and retreat with me. Naturally, I ended up standing right in front of Xiao Unhe, and the two drawn swords crossed between us. That's the situation now. Honestly, you haven't changed a bit. Who the hell do those underlings think they are, drawing their swords in front of a descendant of the polar bloodline? And in the main palace, no less. I calmly glanced back and forth between the two men standing beside him. "I'll count to 3. If your swords aren't sheathed by then, you both die. They're my men." "Are you seriously saying you'd kill them?" I scoffed. "You think I can't? You crazy bastard. And clearly your comprehension skills haven't improved either. Are you even in your right mind? Even if I don't kill them, they'll die anyway. This is the main palace. If they had drawn their swords outside, no one would care what some bastard's son had to deal with. But drawing a blade in the main palace, do you really think those loyal to the Snow Palace will just let that go? The fools in the medicine hall might be your pawns or lackeys of your mother's sect, but they are not part of the core of the Snow Palace. And if someone's that blind to the situation, isn't it better for them to die than keep living? If they're your men, then take proper responsibility for them, unless you want to die with them." Xiao Unhe's eyes began to tremble violently. That look of bewilderment, I'd seen the same thing earlier in the hall master's face. I understood it all too well. Eventually, Xiao Unhe spoke. "Sheathe your swords. How dare you draw them before a member of the polar bloodline?" "We're sorry." Once again, it was just the two of us. I looked at him quietly and said one thing. "When will you finally grow up? You arrogant little bastard. How dare you? Fourth brother, you're not a child anymore." "Shut your damn," Xiao Unhe couldn't finish. I had grabbed him by the shoulder. His rage instantly turned into confusion. He hadn't seen it coming. He had reached the Samwa meditation hall, and I was just at Yang Radiance appears. Yet here I was reaching out, and he hadn't even been able to react, let alone block it. Not just Xiao Unhe. The men he brought with him were all visibly shaken. I spoke calmly. "If you waste my time again with this kind of nonsense, I won't hold back next time." Before I even finished speaking, he slapped my hand away. He then tried to grab my shoulder in return. I slapped it aside. A sharp crack rang out as his hand was deflected and his eyes flew open in disbelief. "There's only one warning. I'll let it slide just this once because we share blood and because father wouldn't want to see kin slaughtering one another." "Who are you?" "I am Dark Snow Kirin Xiao Unwai." "No, you're not Xiao Unwai. No one could change this much. Maybe I just matured finally. Anyway, the meeting's about to begin. You should get going. You seem like you've got a lot to think about, then I'll go on ahead. But I do hope you don't forget what I said." I turned around. Blood. Once, maybe twice, I could issue a warning because of that. As I walked away, Sial and he called out behind me. "You're mistaken about something." I turned my head slightly. "What would that be?" "Same blood. Who gave you the right to say we share the same blood?" Sial and he glared at me with cold eyes. "You're a bastard, illegitimate. Not a proper son, just some rootless mongrel. You must not understand something." "What?" "Half the blood in my veins comes from the Snow Palace, and half the blood in yours does too. That means half of what flows in us is the same." "How the hell can you say that makes us the same?" The smile faded from my lips. Really, ever since my return, I'd had this feeling from time to time. When talking to certain people, it was like dealing with children. Just like now. "Yes, I'm a bastard. Some call me illegitimate, but the proper term is bastard son." It's a broad term. I'm different from the legitimate sons and daughters, but how can you deny that the same blood runs through us? The everlasting Snow Palace was a martial sect, but it also functioned like a nation. It had a unique system, the three consort system. In the Snow Palace, there are no concubines. Everyone holds the rank of formal spouse, though their territories and authority vary. What matters is that they all hold legitimate status. At present, I am the only bastard son in the Snow Palace. All of my older brothers and sisters are legitimate children. There are people on the outside who criticize this system, but it's one of many institutions that reinforce the palace's unity, and no one dares question it. Because it's worked this long, I continued speaking quietly. "The only reason I'm called a bastard is because of background, right?" "What are you trying to say?" "I'm saying to judge people not by background, but as people." Quietly, I drew a dagger from my waist and lightly cut across my left wrist. A slicing sound followed, and blood began to trickle down. The sound of blood dripping to the floor broke the silence like water tapping stone, and with every drop, Sial Unhe's expression twisted more grotesquely. "Is this blood any different from yours, brother? ... It is." "Oh, is it? Does blue blood run through your veins, then?" "Are you mocking me?" I shook my head. "What I'm saying is simple. This is Snow Palace blood. The rest of the blood in your body, brother, comes from the Hanbing sect. Mine comes from a slash-and-burn peasant bloodline, but don't you see? Whatever the rest may be, the only reason either of us is called a descendant of the polar bloodline, the only reason we carry those titles before our names, is because of the blood from the Snow Palace. How much longer are you going to keep clinging to this nonsense about legitimate sons and bastards? And really, of all people, you fourth brother don't have time to waste on that. You, please, grow up already, it's pathetic." I stared at Sial Unhe's frozen face. I was curious what kind of answer he'd give, if any, but none came. "And tell your maternal clan to stop interfering. When I was young, I let things slide, but if they so much as meddle in my affairs again, there will be a price, one way or another. Do you understand? If you've got nothing more to say, I'll be going." Even as I finished, Sial Unhe remained silent. Whether he chose not to speak, or simply couldn't, I didn't care. I'd said all I needed to. I'd issued my warning. That was enough. Wasting any more time would be foolish. I turned and walked away. That bastard. Was that really? Sial Unwhy? He was already out of sight, but the scene that had just unfolded replayed vividly in Sial Unhe's mind. He couldn't make sense of it. Weak was not the word to describe Sial Unwhy. To describe Sial Unwhy, you had to include curses, a disgrace to the palace, a dumbass, the kind of guy whose every thought was transparent, who'd stammer and run away the moment things got tense. A pathetic coward, always a disappointment. That was Sial Unwhy, but what he'd just seen was nothing like that. His tone, his actions, his gaze. Sial Unhe instinctively looked down at his own hands. They were soaked in sweat. The man had completely changed. He wasn't the Sial Unwhy he used to know. It felt like he'd just stood face to face with a martial master who had spent decades in the Murim world. "Young lord, are you all right?" It was one of the two men who had drawn their swords on Sial Unwhy earlier. He was one of Sial Unhe's most trusted subordinates and served as his personal escort. His name was Yijiom. Sial Unhe asked him, "You said earlier, that bastard killed two people in the medicine hall." "Yes, he killed a senior pharmacist and a mid-level one. The senior pharmacist, Jin Hansu, was someone Lord Jin Yangj of the Hanbing sect had openly said he'd recommend for Vice Hall Master." "Grandfather said that?" "Yes." Sial Unhe let out a sigh. "That was one thing. Even if that bastard dared show me that kind of attitude, do you think he could do the same in front of the older brothers?" Yijiom paused for a moment, then answered swiftly, "I don't believe he ever would." "You sure about that? As you well know, my lord, Second Snow Kirin and Great Snow Kirin have already reached the realm of heaven and earth." Sial Unhi didn't exactly feel inferior about that. Since the founding of the Snow Palace, no one had ever progressed that fast. Great Snow Kirin, Sial Horyung, was 27 this year. Second Snow Kirin, Sial Marian, was 26. Both had reached the first stage of the realm of heaven and earth, the realm of harmony. They had already done so 2 years ago, not just in the Snow Palace, in all of Murim. Reaching the realm of harmony at that age was extremely rare. So Sial Unhi had no reason to feel inferior. They weren't just exceptional geniuses, there were 2 of them. Even though the position of the future lord of the Snow Palace hadn't been decided yet, Sial Unhi had no desire to compete in that fight. Sial Unwai had asked him whether he really had time to be acting like this. That was the context behind the question. In the end, he had to pick a side. Who would become the next palace lord? The 2 geniuses were nearly equal in talent. The public believed the elder brother, Great Snow Kirin, held a slight edge, but the result wasn't guaranteed. Someone could die before then. So you're saying he acts like that in front of me because I'm an easy target, but he'd watch his mouth around the older brothers? That's not what I meant. Forget it. I'm curious myself. Has he been hiding his fangs all this time? Or has he really gone mad? Unfortunately for Sial Unhi, his guess was wrong. Sial Unwai didn't treat Sial Unhi that way because he thought he was easy to push around. He disliked Sial Unhi because, out of all the blood relatives, he was the most cunning, the most foolish, and the most unimpressive. Embarrassingly so. That's why Sial Unwai couldn't stand him. As I quickened my pace toward the main palace conference room, I came to a natural stop. "Hey, little brother," I turned my head. There stood a woman with hair white and soft as snow. "It's been a while." "Yes, it has." "Sister, have you been well?" "Been well. I'm too young to be hearing that kind of talk, don't you think? I just couldn't think of a better phrase. Truly, it's good to see you again." "I Snow Spirit, Sial Yonwa, my sister. She's 26 this year." She tilted her head slightly. "So they say you've changed. Guess it's true. Anyway, listen, I went NOVELIGHT to a post-Heavenly Alliance youth gathering recently, right?" As usual, like always, she began to speak naturally while walking beside me. "But some of those guys were seriously weird." "Is that so?" "Especially the young master from the Path of the Overlord sect. He was just ridiculous. You've heard of them, right? Those idiots claiming they inherited the legacy of the Hebei Peng clan that was wiped out during the Millennium Turmoil." "I've heard of them." "He kept trying to hit on me, believe it or not. Even if his brain's made of muscle, at least he knew what was pretty." I just smiled. In all of Everlasting Snow Palace, the only one who ever treated me warmly was her. My sister glanced at me with a curious expression. "Are you okay, little brother?" "Yes, I'm fine." "I'm asking because you don't look fine. What kind of mindset shift did you go through to come out all mature like this? Isn't that a good thing?" "It is. But I'm worried because that bastard definitely won't like it." The bastard she was referring to was a man just ahead of us, entering the conference hall at a measured pace. Long hair, a solid, well-built frame, sharp eyes, crisp clothes, his whole demeanor radiated icy composure. That was Second Snow Kirin Sial Marian. Sial Marian. Technically speaking, although my sister is the eldest daughter in the hierarchy, she's placed below Sial Marian. The order goes: Great Snow Kirin, Second Snow Kirin, Ice Snow Spirit, Third Snow Kirin, Dark Snow Kirin. Sial Marian and my sister were born from the same mother. But because Sial Marian took his first breath just a few moments earlier, he's considered the older sibling, and she's never quite gotten over that. Second brother glanced at the both of us once, then walked silently into the meeting room without a word. He's always been the quiet type, but he seems especially mute today. Second brother rarely speaks. He lives for cultivation. He has no interest in family affairs, doesn't care who bullies me, and generally couldn't be bothered. His only goal is the title of Palace Lord. I paused briefly and then turned my head. My sister, who had walked ahead, turned back as well. There stood a tall man, about 6.5 feet tall, with an imposing presence. "It's been a while, both of you." Great Snow Kirin Sial Horyung, a powerhouse who reached the realm of harmony at 27, I bowed with a martial salute. "It's been a while, first brother." "It has. But hey, little brother." "Yes. I heard you killed 2 pharmacists in the medicine hall." My sister's eyes widened. It was the first time she'd heard that, but she didn't interrupt. I raised my head and looked at my eldest brother. This man, he seemed warm on the surface, but I knew all of it was purely ceremonial. It had always been that way. That didn't mean he was two-faced or insincere. Just precise. Sial Horyung is like Sial Marian. Men consumed by martial arts. Neither cared about family drama or who was tormenting whom. They were cold, detached from those things. Looking back, I realized something else about my brothers, excluding Sial and he, of course. Both were obsessed with martial arts, yes. But they also shared a kind of philosophy. To them, when facing hardship, what mattered wasn't whether you overcame it, but whether you fought desperately to turn it around. Whether you did everything in your power to change your fate. They judged a person's worth based on that alone. If you failed to overcome it, that was all you were. If you gave up without trying, then you weren't worth the air you breathed. In their eyes, such people weren't even worth paying attention to. It was a surprisingly simple worldview, but a solid one. I had come to understand it far too late. Looking at my smiling eldest brother, I answered in an unwavering voice. They disrupted the hierarchy. Would you have let them live, first brother? A crack appeared in that carefully constructed smile. First brother stared at me, clearly surprised, and spoke slowly. Me? Of course not. I'd have killed them too. Of course, first brother, you probably don't care much for being disrespected, but I've trained them thoroughly. Something like this won't happen again. Oh, that almost sounded like there was a bit of a sting to that, huh? Just think of it as a little sibling griping. A smile spread across first brother's lips, and I knew. That wasn't one of his formal, forced smiles. That was genuine. Well, damn, the heavens must be flipping upside down. Are you really our little brother? You've gotten reliable. Thank you. Also, listen, I snuck up just now, hiding my presence on purpose to surprise you both. How the hell did you notice me before Yonwa did? Do I stink or something? No, it's not a smell. I sensed the change in the flow of air around us. You did. Yes. No matter how stealthy someone is, if they can't control the energy that surrounds them, then it's just a pretense of stealth. It's not real stealth. Huh. Well, looks like I just learned something today. You're already a genius who reached the realm of heaven and earth, first brother. I'm sure you'll understand it naturally, sooner or later. He blinked, as if not quite understanding what was happening, and my sister, standing beside me, did the same. What is this? Can a person really change this much? Youngest. You're still the same youngest I used to know, right? Yes, I am. No, seriously, I just can't wrap my head around it. Yonwa, this kid, he's really our youngest, right? I don't understand it either, brother. Right, it's not just me, is it? Damn. Trailing off, my eldest brother scratched his head. It was obvious why he was acting like this. What I'd said earlier was stuck in his head. And how did I know that? A movement pretending to be covert, huh? He was mumbling that to himself. My sister and I silently watched him. Then, a movement pretending to be covert. Youngest, yes. Then what is true stealth? Just as I opened my mouth to answer, aha, I think I get it. Youngest, you were pointing out that I was only trying to hide, right? That mere sleight of hand techniques leave behind traces in the end. My sister's eyes widened, and I simply looked quietly at my eldest brother. Leaves a trace. Right, of course it leaves a trace. If you're making an effort to hide, how could you not leave traces? So true concealment would mean not trying to hide, just becoming a part of nature itself. That's real stealth. The sudden monologue stopped there. And it was right that it did. My eldest brother suddenly sat down cross-legged on the spot in silence. He had reached a moment of realization. In an instant, he seemed to slip into a trance, but then his brow furrowed all at once. He got up again. Click. Damn shame. What do you mean? I thought I'd grasped a clue that could push me into the unity of heaven and man, but I guess I'm still missing something. He brushed a hand down his face. Is this man even human? In my past life, I never knew that my brother possessed this kind of talent. All I did was drop a tiny hint about the nature of stealth. And now he turned that into a possible gateway to the realm of the martial god. Ha! Still, thanks to our youngest, I gained a clue. Wow, looks like our youngest's transformation ended up helping his big brother out too, huh? I hadn't intended that, but since the outcome was good, I let it be. My eldest brother patted my shoulder lightly. There's always a reason why people change. Our youngest, you've had your own struggles, haven't you? Looks like you've overcome them. That's roughly right. Oh, so it's not the right answer? It's very close. Sial Horyung burst into laughter. Good, youngest. Yes, brother, I really like who you are now. Thank you. You finally look like a real descendant of the Snow Palace. Until now, to be honest, I wasn't impressed. I know. That's why you never treated me like a person. Hey now, don't say it like that. You'll make your brother feel bad, but I hope this change isn't just temporary. I hope so too. You're interesting. Sial Horyung looked at me with an odd expression, then casually gestured. Let's go in, we can't keep the sovereign waiting. As he said that, Sial Horyung leaned in and whispered softly by my ear. Our youngest, when I step into the unity of heaven and man, I'll give you a really nice gift. So look forward to it. I turned my head to see Sial Horyung grinning. He looked genuinely pleased as he strode lightly toward the council hall. My sister and I, who had paused for a moment, followed after him. I've reached the manifestation of the infinite myself, but that man, he's a real monster, right? It seems so. My gaze remained fixed on Sial Horyung, one of the two prodigies born of the everlasting snow palace. But unfortunately, he would never become the palace sovereign. No, he wouldn't even become the deputy sovereign. Exactly half a year from now, he will die. Did you do something to upset your brother? I looked at Sial Yonwa, who had asked in a quiet voice. It wasn't just Sial Horyung. Sial Yonwa. She wasn't quite on the level of the two prodigies, but she was still an extraordinary talent by martial world standards. She was 26 years old and had reached the manifestation of the infinite. And exactly 1 year from now, she too will die. Near the Martial Alliance headquarters, the cause of death, assassination. The number of attackers, 5. 3 were captured at the time, 2 escaped. Those 2 later I captured them myself, tortured them for about 10 years, then I fed them alive to a pack of wild dogs. Why are you looking at me like that? Did I do something to you too? I was just looking. Really strange. What's gotten into you? Want some pocket money or something? I'm fine. You should go in first. Sial Yonwa scratched her head, and N-O-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456 G Cyrillic letter 4 BBT. Only on N-O-V-Y-L Cyrillic letter 456 G Cyrillic letter 4 BBT stepped inside the council hall. I stood at the entrance for a moment. Across the room, already seated and waiting, was Sial Muryan, arms crossed. People of the Snow Palace say, either Sial Horyung or Sial Muryan will lead the everlasting Snow Palace. Half a year after Sial Horyung's death, Sial Muryan becomes deputy sovereign. Then, 6 months later, Sial Yonwa dies. And 6 months after that, Sial Muryan dies too. In the far future, the one who finally sits in the sovereign seat of the everlasting Snow Palace wasn't one of the polar bloodline. Over there, in the very back, hands clasped behind his back, wearing a warm smile, Deputy Sovereign Yang Xiaojin. He will be the one to lead the everlasting Snow Palace. I looked at him, and just then he looked back at me. A soft, comforting smile spread across his lips. I smiled back. A flicker of something strange passed through his eyes. I ignored it. Why did my father die? He wasn't the strongest in the world, but he was close enough to challenge the title. How could a man like that just die of illness? Why did all the polar bloodline heirs die in incidents? That bastard. He's the one who'll ruin the Snow Palace. A flea drawing out a grand scheme. Yang Xiaojin's current level is the second stage of the martial god realm, manifestation of the infinite. About 10 years from now, he'll reach Dao transformation and true authority. But that's as far as he'll go. No, he won't even make it that far, because I'll kill him, just like I did back then. He was a tall man. His height was around 7 chiak, more than a full head taller than the average adult male. A towering figure sat at the seat of honor. Though his face looked young enough to defy the mark of 80 years, the faint wrinkles etched between his brows told the story of a long, grueling life. His silver-white hair was tied neatly behind his head, accentuating a broad forehead, a sharp nose bridge, and firmly pressed lips. The flowing hem of his pure white robe shimmered faintly, as if releasing a subtle spiritual aura with every gust of wind. Around him there was always a faint mist of frost, and with each breath the temperature in the room subtly shifted. The one who ruled over 1,000 years of snow and ice. Master of the everlasting snow mountains. Sovereign of the everlasting Snow Palace. Here in this palace he is called the Ice Heaven Supreme. The sovereign of the Snow Palace, Ice Heaven Supreme Sial Yongchen. His level was the 4th stage of the martial god realm, vast emptiness beyond form. Undoubtedly, he was only a half step away from reaching sovereign of primordial oneness, the peak realm reserved for true martial gods. Nothing else could explain his current state. A man who stood just short of the greatest in the world, ranked 4th in the martial hierarchy. That man was my father. Sit! At the weight of his voice, all descendants of the polar bloodline, including the deputy sovereign tucked in the corner, took their seats. A fundamental question lingered in the air. Why had this meeting been called? Though it might appear to be a family gathering, attended only by direct blood relatives, it wasn't nearly so casual. This was serious. Before any major affairs of the palace were decided, there were matters that had to be addressed solely within the bloodline. That was the reason for this meeting. My father turned his gaze toward the deputy sovereign. Receiving the unspoken signal, the deputy sovereign gave a nod and stood from his seat. He began to speak. Some of you may already know, but since others do not, I will begin with a brief explanation. The deputy sovereign paused, then pulled out a small pouch from inside his robes. He reached inside and pulled out an ice crystal more than twice the size of the pouch itself. A situation that made no logical sense, unless you were here. That pouch was a storage sack. A treasure designed to hold items dozens of times its own size through embedded formations. It wasn't something common, of course, but it wasn't completely unattainable either. The deputy sovereign placed the ice crystal on the table. Instead of radiating a pure white glow, it gave off a dark, bluish-black hue. Exactly 10 days ago, martial artists from the Snow Celestial Guard discovered this while patrolling the northwestern ice wall. Since then, the ice along that section has started to discolor. And now, trailing off, the deputy sovereign reached into the storage sack again and pulled out another crystal. Its shape was the same as the previous one, but its color was different. Compared to the dark blue one, this one was pitch black. Seeing it, I nearly let out a scoff. I managed to keep a straight face and simply looked toward the deputy sovereign. It felt like I was watching someone perform tricks for a child. This crystal was collected from the perimeter this morning. The change took just 10 days, and the bigger issue lies elsewhere. This corrupted crystal is polluting the snow chi of the everlasting snow palace. 3 disciples collapsed during training, and their meridians froze. It'll take them at least half a month of treatment just to recover. If this corruption spreads further, it will become a true disaster. So that's why we'd been gathered. This wasn't just important, it was critical. The odds that such a phenomenon occurred naturally were close to zero. Someone was attacking the everlasting snow palace, or at the very least, testing the waters. Great Snow Kirin Sial Horyong asked, "Was this the work of the Central Blood Sect?" To that, my father answered, "It's uncertain." I remained quiet, just listening. But in my mind, a memory from the past flashed before my eyes. The Central Blood Sect, undeniably the greatest sect in the martial world. Within the sect were 5 major subsects, and the one I recalled was Serpent Valley. Its mistress, the Poison Empress, once said to me, "Elder, I heard you're planning to start a war with the everlasting Snow Palace. You're incredible. When you crushed the Martial Alliance last time, I almost lost my mind. Are you going to make me lose it again? You're going alone? Why? That's disappointing. I don't think you'll fail, but if our elder is going on an expedition, how could I just let you leave empty-handed? I want to offer you a little something. Will you accept it? It's nothing big. This is called snow-infused frost poison. We developed it after years of infiltration and research inside the Snow Palace. I think it'll come in handy. Once you clear out all the weaklings, won't we have more time to play together at night?"